Hello, everyone, and a very good morning. Distinguished delegates, presenters, and participants from SAARC member states and other regions around the globe. It gives me a great pleasure to extend you all a very warm welcome on behalf of SAARC Energy Center. I'm very thankful to all of you for joining us in the SAARC webinar on promotion of energy conservation in municipalities of SAARC. It's second of the series. My name is Ehsanullah Marwat and I am working at SAARC Energy Center as Research Fellow Energy Efficiency. I shall be moderating today's webinar. Ladies and gentlemen, energy conservation and energy efficiency are important measures to ensure energy security and sustainable development. Energy use in municipal activities is not only one of the largest sources of greenhouse gas emissions, it also causes significant burden on their budget. By increasing energy conservation, municipalities can reduce their cost of energy and emissions. Officials of the municipalities and local government can play an important role to set their targets in this regard. With a view to bringing about energy conservation in municipal sector, SAARC Energy Center has arranged this webinar on promotion of energy conservation in municipalities of SAARC member states. In our first webinar, we discussed solutions and recommendations for experts by the experts around the globe for effective implementation of energy conservation in municipalities of South Asia. We discussed energy consumption in municipalities and potential area for energy savings, role of municipalities in energy conservation and sustainable smart cities of future, solar street lighting and ultra LEDs for buildings. Presentation slides are available on SEC website or otherwise you can ask for on demand via email. In current webinar, we will be trying to focus on targeted actionable potential areas, such potential areas to save energy by intelligently planning vehicle routing for collection of municipal solid waste, implementation strategy to successfully adopt waste to energy in our municipalities, and last but not least, and most important, financing arrangement for municipal energy efficiency projects. I'm extremely grateful to our elite panel of presenters, including Mr. Naveed Anwar from Sustainable Development Study Center, Government College University, Lahore, Pakistan. Dr. Abdusattar Nizami, Head of Solid Waste Management Unit, Center of Excellence in Environmental Studies of King Abdulaziz University, Saudi Arabia, and Mr. Sandeep Kumar Mohante, Director, Price House Water Cooper Private Limited, India, for their enthusiasm and eager willingness to participate in our webinar. I shall introduce them in detail before the start of their relevant sessions. Dear participants, you will have the opportunity to ask questions to presenter by typing your questions or clicking to the raised hand option into the attendees pane of the main window of GoToWebinar software. You may send in your questions at any time during the presentations. We will collect these and address them during the question and answer session at the end of each presentation. Additionally, you will also have a chance to share your views in the knowledge sharing session of the webinar. It is indeed my pleasure to inform you that the Deputy Director, SAARC Energy Center, Dr. Shoaib Ahmed, has also joined us in the webinar. We are thankful to you, sir, for taking out time from your busy schedule to attend this event. Well, ladies and gentlemen, let's move to our technical session and start with formal presentations. Our first presenter is Mr. Naveed Anwar from Government College University, Lahore, Pakistan. Mr. Naveed Anwar is a regular faculty member at Sustainable Development Study Center, Government College University, Lahore, Pakistan. He has a master's degree in environmental sciences from National University of Science and Technology, Islamabad, Pakistan. He is a certified lead auditor for ISO 14001 Environmental Management System. Prior to GCU, he has been working as Deputy Manager Environment at Forward Sports Sialkot, Let me also mention that this forward sports airport is the official football producer for footballs used in FIFA World Cup 2018 Russia, and a leading waste management, and also he has experience with leading waste management company of Pakistan, Lahore Waste Management Company. He has a major contribution in helping industry achieving the energy conservation and waste reduction targets. His major research areas include interdisciplinary relation among thematic areas of climate change, solid waste management, air pollution, and environmental management. He has published several research papers and conference papers in the area of his research. May I request Mr. Naveed Anwar to give us an overview of vehicle routing techniques and the role of vehicle routing management in conserving energy and time in collecting municipal solid waste. Over to you, Mr. Naveed Anwar.
Uh,
Yes, Mr.
Thank
Naveed,
you, dear
you are
Mr.
audible.
Hassan.
You are audible.
Could you please, yeah, and could you please say, see my screen as well?
Yeah, your screen is visible and you are audible. Please go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, dear Mr. Hassan, for such kind introduction. And I am quite grateful for SAARC Energy Center for providing me with this opportunity to officers of various countries, and especially the municipalities officials and local government officials and representative, because I think these officials are the key policy makers, and it is really an honor, and it really is a pleasure to deliver a talk over role of vehicle routing to collect municipal solid waste management in energy conservation in municipalities. And thank you for the kind introduction. So moving, am I audible?
Very clear and loud. Please go ahead. Wherever we have an issue, we will
Thank you. Thank you.
disturb you.
All right. All right, fine. Thank you. So today's talk we will be focusing, as you mentioned earlier, that my focus has been conservation, waste reduction, climate change, air pollution mitigation, solid waste management, and I think all these issues are interdisciplinary. If you could manage your municipal solid waste in an efficient manner, or and you could manage its six functional elements in an efficient manner, you could also address the climate change, energy crisis issue, economic crisis issue, your air pollution issue. So today, in today's talk, I'll be briefly presenting what are basic functional elements of waste management, how the functional elements, the management of efficient management of these functional elements could help us reduce the need of the routing, and if we need routing, then how, what are the techniques that we could adapt to, efficiently plan routing in order to basically save our fuel, and in terms of that fuel we could save our energy. And secondly, I'll be discussing how this routing eliminating to as much extent that we could, or planning this routing intelligently could basically address our major environmental problem of South Asian region. As per my humble opinion, these major problems that we are facing is waste management. We are producing tons of waste on a daily basis, municipal waste, but we have not been able to install certain good waste management systems in most of our municipalities. And then there is this energy this energy crisis issue, basically. And then there is this air pollution issue that is mostly due to vehicular transportation as well. And then this is the issue that is climate change, and this climate change is basically is by the commission sharing the IPCC intergovernmental panel on climate change data regarding this, how this climate change is basically fossil systems. The major concern is economic as well, but the energy conservation in terms of energy here, the fossil fuel is being burned, and fossil fuel are the energy that we need to intend to conserve. So how routing could help conserve the, or reduce the consumption of fossil fuel, and then that reduction in the fossil fuel combustion could have beating climate change mitigation the governmental panel and UN United Nations back in 2015. So all these issues, and then there is smoke, and the smoke is basically in Pakistan, for example, there are various, and in Delhi as well. The smoke is basically because of vehicular combustion, and there are sulfur oxides and nitrogen oxides are there, and then when these are and these are basically particularly emitted fossil and NOx is the vehicular through vehicular plan our vehicle intelligence to reduce or cut down the need for that routing. Also, the smoke issue as well. Then this is dependent on fuel, and that fuel is basically that is being used in the routing process, that is basically mostly imported, so that is that cost us a fortune as well in terms of our import bill as well. And then the lastly the issue I think all would be agreeing is traffic congestion. So all these issues are interlinked with the traffic or vehicular routing of solid waste management. So if we could betterly plan our waste management, then we could be addressing these all these issues as well. So moving on with vehicular routing, I'll be firstly, I hope everybody is pretty familiar with this concept, but just for the sake of introduction, I'll be moving on with the 6 functional elements of municipal solid waste management. Municipal solid waste management basically comprises of 6 functional elements. The very first one is generation, then there is collection, and then there is primary and secondary storage, then there is transfer and transfer station, treatment and recovery, and disposal. Now, all these and then importance of efficient waste, municipal waste management to reduce routing. So, talking about routing before moving on to the routing introduction and how routing techniques could be adopted, or how intelligent routing could be instilled, we should look over these functional elements as well. Because if you could control the generation of waste, in this term, you could reduce the number of vehicles required to ultimately collect that waste, and later on to transfer that collected waste to storage, and then from that storage to transfer station. Similarly, if you are improving or planning your collection intelligently, you would be reducing the number of vehicles. Then there is this storage point. For example, if you are having 15 vehicles and you are basically collecting a waste of 1 ton from one point, and you are basically collecting it directly, and you are not storing over here. So a approach is this. B approach is that you are basically having a secondary storage point after collection, and hereby you are basically storing your waste and at a town level, and then you are basically transferring that or transporting that stored waste into transfer station. So this will cut down the vehicles at that point as well. Then mostly there is absence of this proper transfer station and transfer point and transfer station. I'll be coming back to this transfer station point in detail later in this presentation, uh, because this transfer station point is quite important. If you could and then if you have installed a transfer station point, that would cut down the vehicular number required, but you haven't installed a proper treatment and recovery where you could convert that waste into biogas. You could yield RDF, refuse dry fuel. You could have recycled material separate, yield separately, and then you could do incineration in a controlled environment, and then you have energy recovery. So most of the waste could be reduced and avoided at this point at transfer station. So you would ultimately be cutting down the need of vehicular routing or the transportation of the waste from transfer point to disposal point, that could be landfill, that could be dump site, to 80% or 70%, even in a very ideal scenario 85 to 90% as well. So all these points are quite important in order to reduce the, or in order to conserve the energy that is being used while you are commuting, or while you are transporting, or while you are transporting, you are transferring your waste from a point. That could be generation, that could be collection, that could be storage, that could be transfer point, and that could be treatment point to your final disposal point. So we should be very careful when we should be planning our municipal waste management. And there are, and I'll be more happy if you could have a specific question about this generation, collection, transfer station, or treatment stage, how this could be discussed in detail, and at the later stage of the presentation, if you have any questions. Moving on, what is vehicle routing? A brief intro. As I have already mentioned, that importance of vehicle routing is quite important, and specifically in talking about energy conservation, air quality improvement, coping up with your traffic congestion issues, and then there is the cost saving issue. Energy conservation, if you have planned your vehicle routing smartly, intelligently, like if for instance we have a vehicle which is basically commuting a waste of like 200 kilogram per meter cube density. So the waste could be 100 kilogram per meter cube, and the waste could be like 1000 kgs, or for instance 1 ton waste is there. So for that matter, you need 20 vehicles to commute or transfer that waste from one place to other. But if you could compact that waste, if you could reduce the volume of that waste, and you could increase this density to roughly, ideally 250 or 300 kilogram per meter cube, or even up to 500 kilogram per meter cube, you will be reducing the number of vehicle required from 5 to 1, or so you will be directly eliminating 4 vehicles from the routing. And all those 4 vehicles fuel that would have been needed at first place had we not gone for this option is saved now. So that is basically energy conservation. Similarly, if there are 2 vehicles could serve the purpose of vehicle transportation of the waste from one point to another. So you could easily switch it to one by a better management that will be studying later on. So that again would not only help in traffic congestion, not only save our cost, labor cost, the maintenance cost, the capital cost that is needed for the vehicles, the air quality issue that I explained earlier, that the smoke episode, like in Lahore, we have been witnessing this smoke episode. And I am also a team member of leading team member of the research project, that is our Higher Education Commission's research project. And we are also monitoring the Lahore winter smoke episodes as well. And we have found out that NOx and the particulate matter that is due to the unburned fuel, or this from these trucks and the trailers, are the major reason as well. So that air quality improvement, and not only in smoke, in overall in the year, that air quality improves as well. So if we could improve our vehicle routing, we could address all these issues as well. Moving on, there are this is simple for your overview. There is one is basically it's about municipal solid waste management, efficient management. The direct collection is you are loading the waste, and then your that vehicle is basically transporting your waste to direct to the disposal site. Now, what is the problem with this approach? Like in we are living in Lahore city, and the Lahore is covering an area roughly. For example, there is this town XYZ town, that is, for instance, Johor town, and that would be the Thokar Niaz Beg is the point of the Lahore, that is located roughly at the western side of the Lahore. And then the collection site is roughly Mehboob Booty, that could even be located 27 kilometer or 25-kilometer distance away from the your generation point. So you are basically commuting or routing, your vehicle is routing for 25 kilometers. So this is direct location. Second is the two-stage collection. In here, your vehicle is loaded, and it is transferred to first transfer to a transfer point, and then that transferred point, the waste is disposed to the disposal site. Next is your two-stage, third three-stage collection. Here there is primary collection by cart. there the vehicles need is basically eliminated. Then there is a first transfer. It is again transported, and it is transported by a small vehicle to a second transfer, and then it is basically transported to a disposal site. This is a three-stage collection. A very better efficient system more than this could also be, we will be discussing it later on in the later portion of this presentation, that we could have this treatment and recovery option at transfer station that could eliminate the if we have received like 1,000 ton waste at the second transfer point, and 80 per 60% is the organic waste in the municipal waste, organic waste that could be easily converted into biogas. So we could eliminate that 80 or 60 70% waste over here just by converting into biogas. Rest could be converted into compost over here. So we'll be discussing in the later stage. So here at the direct collection, a lot of vehicles are required. At this two-stage collection, vehicle requirement is lessened. And here one should also see that there is a very minute difference between the mileage of the vehicles in terms of their carrying capacity. For instance, a vehicle is carrying roughly 1,000 kg of waste, so it will consume 10 liter or one roughly for instance, it will consume 5 liter per hour. So another vehicle which is commuting 2,000 kg, it could only increase 11 to 12 liter per hour the waste. So if we increase the capacity of that vehicle, only a very minute difference in the consumption occurs. So if you had to employ two vehicles for that waste transferring, it could have consumed like 20 liter. Over here, if you have consumed applied or employed one vehicle with better capacity, or so it will be only consuming roughly 12 to 13 liters. So you have the saving of 7 liter. So this is a very, this could have been another approach in comparison. So, what should be some common rules that could be looked after for planning a better routing? A route should not be fragmented, overlapping. Each road should be compact, consist of segment. This is something that the vehicle should be the routing should be planned in a way. We will be looking over 4 to 5 example of this. That each road the vehicle should not travel or should not the pass from the one place twice at very best. So we will be studying this. The collection route should be started as close to garage or motor pool as possible. So the collection, what is the idea behind this? Because if there is a garage behind or motor pool behind nearby, so there would be every single kilometer of that vehicle routing is being useful. Otherwise, the vehicle would have to travel at separate distance to cover the the points which have been left from in between the motor pool or garage and the first collection point. Or heavily traveled streets should not be collected during rush hours. So this is a very important point, like in Lahore over here, or in Karachi or Delhi or other municipalities, whereby there is this traffic congestion issues there. And then there we know that there are certain rush hours, there could be these school hours, there could be these college hours, university hours, or there could be office hours. So there is traffic congestion. So if you commute by that road and roughly in a rush hour, it will take roughly 1 to 2 hours, for instance, for that commuting. And if you come, especially at highways or something like that, and main roads of the urban cities, and if you commute at some normal time, so it will take 15 to 20 minutes of yours. So roughly you could save a lot of fuel if you could choose your collection time very carefully. Then services on dead end streets, like if there is some dead end street, so instead of there could be some better planning is there. For instance, there could be some manual transferring of that waste from collection and transferring of that waste to vehicle, manual by cart or by small vehicles. Because if the large vehicles would be commuting or routing through that street, chances are that it will either cause traffic congestion, traffic blockage, and plus there would be issue in the reversing that vehicle. So you should not take that street with a dead end street, and the other manual or small carts should be used to transfer the waste from that area to this vehicle. And then again, the dead end street must be collected by walking down, backing down, or making a U-turn. So when practical, street wheels should. So this is another point. If there is some municipality, for instance, we have Rawalpindi in our country, and in India, in Sri Lanka, and there would be some other hilly areas and urban hilly areas. So if you are commuting, so it's really it's good to collect the waste from when you are moving more downhill, because it will be for safety, for ease, and it will also conserve the oil, because vehicle would have to uh, uh, spends less fuel on the commuting of that waste, and it will also reduce the wear and tear of vehicle and all that stuff. So higher elevation should be at the start of the road. This again is more specifically for the hilly areas, and backing up should be avoided. There should be this manual lifting. And then again, as we discussed, that collection route should start as close to the pool. It should also end as close to the waste final destination. Because if it is ended somewhere far from there, so then that vehicle would have to commute again, so to cover that distance. And street should not be traveled twice. It should be traveled once only if it is picking the waste from the both sides at a time. If it is for some reason impossible for pick the waste at both sides, so then it could be traveled twice, but we should avoid that scenario. For certain block configuration within the road, and in case of collection from one side of the street at a time, the specific routing pattern should be applied. I'll be discussing these routing pattern with examples later on. So there are these three blocks, and if I could show you with this laser pointer. So these are these three blocks, and we have to define a starting point and finishing point. Instead of planning on without intelligently, we could start it from some point, defined point, like here. If we are starting from here, and it is collecting the waste on its left side over here, or sorry, its right side over here, and then it is collecting its the waste on its right side, and then the vehicle is collecting the waste on the right side, and it is commuting from here, and then again right side, and then it is collecting the waste on this right side, and this right side, and then this right. So you can see in one trip there is nothing has been overlapped. There is no U-turn. There is no dead end being met. So the waste has been collected very efficiently. Uh, Dear Mr. Ehsan, everything, everybody could hear me?
Yes, Mr. Naveed, it's very audible and very clear. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So another example, if you have to plan the vehicle routing for 4 blocks now, so again you could start any point, but the heuristic or the commonsensical point of view could be like starting from here, and then again this vehicle would be collecting its waste from the right side, again right, and then all the waste from the right blocks are being collected, and then this, instead of now this vehicle, if it commutes over here, so it will be having to travel some extra distance over here. So instead of turning downwards, it will collecting the right side waste of this block, and then again right side, and then right side of this block, and then right side of this block, and all you could see waste from the blocks are being collected, and no overlapping, no dead end, no any clash or something has been observed, and it is a very, the vehicle is commuting in a very smooth fashion. Now, a bit difficult one. I think most of the planned urbanized, there are very few, but like in Islamabad or at at other countries, there are blocks that are being planned. So in this case, if you could see the vehicle routing is starting from here, and it is basically Now it is you could see collecting the waste from the you could have it right side, left side, or right side. So it is collecting the waste from here, and then it is collecting the waste from the left side, and then there is this collecting the waste from this right side, and then it is collecting the waste from this left side later, and then there is this left side that have been left, and then there is this side of the block as being, this block is being covered. So each block has been covered with a very minimum overlapping, and that could be sort of, that was the best possible scenario. And we could even work it out. If we could work it out, we should we may plan a better routing practice than this as well. So this is basically eliminating, there is no, practically almost no dead end is here while collecting the waste. This is a bit of a difficult one scenario, but then again we could have a very haphazard based collection, whereby we could first collect from one way, and then we could head to this deadhead or this deadhead, and there is this steep hill as well there. And so now we will be basically so the waste is being, the vehicle has started commuting from somewhere here, and then it is basically and now it has basically, this is dead end, and this has collected waste from here, and this has dead end, and then it has been basically commuting from here. And as you could see, this is a steep hill, so we haven't collected waste from other blocks yet, because if we had collected waste from other blocks, it would consume a lot of fuel, it wear and tear every other aspect. If we had collected waste from these blocks, so we haven't collected waste from these blocks as while we are doing routing. We have started from here, and we are basically, this is dead end, and then there is a steep hill, and at this point only these blocks, this is red hat, there is no blocks, these are two blocks. So and only two blocks have been the waste from two blocks has been collected only up till now. So then there is this steep hill, and then this block, and then this is this routing, and then this routing, and then one way, and then again it goes upward, and then block, this waste is collected, and then this side of the waste is collected, and then it moves to the garage. So in this way almost there's practically no overlapping, and the dead heads are basically, or the most important point is this steep hill. If we had collected, designed the recurring at like this way, and we had collected all this waste, and then we had this table to cover the cover, and to collect the waste from this block with the steep hill, or from this, and then there would have been a lot of energy and oil consumption and fuel consumption and wear and tear, and or you may say that the vehicle, more vehicles would have required to basically uh, 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 carry the trailer or the track, the uh, container behind from this. So we have basically practically avoided quite a fuel consumption. If you have any questions up till now about routing or how it is, so I'll be moving on with the importance of transfer stations and the treatment now. So or we may take question at the later at the last in the QA section. Here, Mr. Hassan, kindly guide me.
After your presentation. So please go ahead
Okay,
with your.
fine. So, thank you, thank you. So now I hope I have made a good case about how the intelligent routing or planning, and how a good planning could basically save the fuel, and not only fuel, it could promote energy conservation, but it could be economic as well. And we all know that we saw officials, saw countries basically are importing fuel for our consumption mainly. So there are a lot of import bill is there, fraction of import bill is from this fuel import. And so, and then traffic congestion, smoke, and mismanage of waste, and then all these could be avoided by simply managing waste efficiently. And for in that management, as far as our current specifically today's topic goes, it could be the vehicle routing. So now, what is transfer station? The transfer station is basically, I hope you are familiar, but just for the sake of introduction, the transfer station is basically a point whereby instead of directly commuting or transporting your waste from A generation side or B collection side, C secondary storage side to directly disposal side, you had for instance, there are 100 vehicles which are which are collecting the waste, or 1,000 vehicles which are collecting the waste from a big city, or 100 vehicles are collecting the waste from one block of a city, main town of the mega city. So that instead of those 100 vehicles should commute to that final disposal point of city, that is only one. All these 100 vehicles could basically commute to one central transfer station of some 5 to 7 transfer stations of that city, and that could, and then we could have this compaction being done on that waste, and then we could have a big vehicle commuting that waste, and we could eliminate the need of 100 vehicles, and that all the waste would be in a business as usual scenario, 10 to 15 vehicles only. So that will eliminate the 90 vehicles need of, for example, and all these values are very supposedly, because these values would be varying, but just to give you an idea. But so this is the function of transfer station. And how we would be as per cost, how would we be reaching to a point that we need a transfer station when your cost of the transportation, that mainly is because of labor cost, and secondly the fuel cost exceeds the cost, without the transportation exceeds the cost that we would have with transport. So that is a break-even point, and once that break-even point is reached, then we know that we need a transfer station, and we would saving cost. And in terms of cost, we will be saving the fuel, and in terms of fuel, we will be saving the energy. So the energy conservation, that is a major problem. That's a major way out for climate change mitigation. So this is some point. Transfer station, two main types are there. There are primary collection vehicles, usually motorized, and then there are some advanced we will discussing. And why there is need. Firstly, direct hauling of the processing center or disposal site is no longer economically feasible, as explained in the break-even point. And then when disposal site or processing center is a remote location, for instance, that I in my own city Lahore, disposal site could be 30 kilometer away from the generation point. So that is a quite a distance to cover by all the vehicles. So then we need to have a transfer station in between. So World Health Organization also advises on the base of economy, but as we know that this is economic issue for us as well, but it's more like air pollution issue, it's more like fuel consumption, it's more like energy conservation. So wherever we are saving some cost, we are also saving the energy as well. It's vice versa as well. Economic of transfer station, we could have this, I think we could, and then where it should be located near as possible to better center of the areas to be served, within easy access of major highway routes, where there will be minimum public environmental objections, and where construction and operation will be most economical. It should not be in some very urban commercial area. It could be very in area like downtowns, whereby it could be not that much expensive. So that is a previous picture. So there are three types of transfer station. One is direct load, then is storage load, and then there is combined. In direct load, you are for like I give an example whereby you have 100 vehicles, so you are basically unloading those 100 vehicles into 2 or 3 mega big vehicles. So this is direct load. In storage load, you basically unload that waste, and then you have this storage, and then you do some compaction and the treatment that I'll be explaining in the next slide, and this is storage. And then you have multi-purpose facilities, thereby you could decide that it's a direct load, or we should have it stored and then move on. So this is an explanation of that. Now, I'm only just finishing, reaching to the conclusions as well. So waste treatment of black labels and vehicle routing. So this is I am working on this as with my a couple of my research students, MPhil research students currently, and we are working on this idea whereby, for instance, I'll be explaining in 2 to 3 minutes. We have a very mega city like Karachi, Lahore, like Delhi, Mumbai, or some mega cities. So the waste is being produced from one point that is away 25 to 27 or 28 kilometer away from the final disposal point. And the fate of that waste is the disposal. And we all are familiar that we are basically making some good, mashallah, achievements and the good improvements in the waste management system. But there are very few efficiently designed landfill system in our whole SAARC region, and specifically in Pakistan, there could be only in functional couple of landfill system functional, which are functional. Other than that, there are the dumping sites, and those dumping sites will basically again be source of air pollution, noise pollution as well, and then there could be aesthetic problem as well, aesthetic pollution, that could be land pollution, water pollution when this leachate is being produced, and most importantly, it will be again be converted into it will be decomposed, and it will cause the emission of methane, and that again is a greenhouse gas emission, and then again the climate change issue and global warming is there. So all that scenario A is there. And the major disadvantage of that scenario as well, that you have to commute your waste from 25 kilometers to, let's say, if you are commuting it from transfer station as well, to of 5 towns. So you will be commuting from your waste from a generation point to, or from transfer point. From transfer point, a generation point could be located 30 kilometer away from your disposal point, and if mega cities, if you are not having some disposal point near the vicinity of your city, then it could be like 50 kilometers as well. But and in transfer station, case of transfer station, at least 20 to 25-kilometer distance, whole distance would have to be covered. So what if we had this treatment at almost block level A, ideally, or we could have it, on 4 to 5 blocks. If city is having 100 union councils or 100 blocks or 100 any administratively administrated areas, segments, and city could have 100 blocks, and we had this transient treatment facility at 5 blocks, each 5 blocks each. We would collect the waste from 5 blocks, and we have this transfer station or treatment point at this and 5 blocks in the center of the 5 blocks. And that could be, nowadays it's not a very impossible thing. Even there was a cricket ground, or there that was built, I think, if I'm not wrong, or some other grounds which are basically built indoors in order to avoid the rain. So we could have this in the very within the city. There could be tree covers, and then there could be, this could be very contained area could be there, and there could be containments as well. So aesthetically it could be very good as well, made good as well. So this treatment point could like it receives 1,000 tons of waste, sorry, 100 tons of waste on a monthly basis, or 50 tons of waste on a monthly basis, some bag of basis, or let's say 10 tons of the waste on the monthly basis. So instead of commuting these 10 tons from that 5 blocks to the disposal point, we could have this treatment plant whereby we could convert this waste into biogas, since 60 to 70% of this municipal waste from our SAARC region is organic in nature. We could convert some waste that is has having high combustibility or combustible value, calorific value, into refuse dry fuel. And then there could be this compost with anaerobic digestion, we could convert into biogas, and then biogas could also give us fertilizer as well. And we with the and with that fertilizer, you could have this agrarian meat required needs met as well. And then you could, with aerobic digestion, you could convert that waste into compost, and then manure is there, and then there could be some recycling materials. You could recycle that material and could have small, let's say, factories, or then use of that recycling small firms in at that block level. And then there should be some reusable material that is waste from, because by the definition, waste is something that could be unusable, unwanted at specific time, for a specific person, for a specific purpose. So nothing waste, only it is unusable, unwanted for a specific time, for a specific person, for a specific purpose. So a waste of one person could be resourced to another. So red area concept is there. So this could be reusable material, could be reused, and then there could be incineration of the high value calorific value waste. We could have this incineration, so we could practically, I won't go into the ideal scenario that we should be reducing that waste to 100%, that zero waste scenario, but at least we could try, we could by this model we could reduce this waste to even we could reduce 70 to 80% waste. So if you have reduced this 80% waste at block level, so what you have achieved, you have a your biogas, RDF, compost, recycled material, all this is energy, and all this has saved your primary resource, natural resource conservation, fuel conservation, energy conservation, economic saving. All this stuff is there. And secondly, you had to transport that waste to disposal point, and that would be take 1,000 vehicle on monthly basis. Now you only require 100 vehicles, so 900 vehicles are eliminated from the roads, and all that fuel that would have been needed to transport that vehicles is now saved. That is energy conservation and economic conservation as well. In another aspect, that is air quality improvement, that is smog, and that is climate change, everything. Okay? So then there could be this energy, and then secondly, as I said, there in Pakistan only, I think, to my best knowledge, there are only 2 to 3 good functional landfill systems are there, and other rest are the dumping sites. So then there is methane and all those the problems. So you have avoided those problems as well. So then there is socio-economic uplift of the workers and the persons of that area, that would also yield the employment opportunities at that treatment levels or various plants, biogas plant, recycling material, reusable material. So all this could be achieved, and that will be reducing the number of vehicles required to complete the transportation. And this is the best way to plan our vehicle routing to minimize the need for vehicle routing. And this is basically the Paris Agreement that is being the landmark. So this basically is now driving the action towards energy conservation, waste management, waste to energy, and all the other. So this has been the landmark agreement that was attended by roughly 190 heads of states, and this Paris in Paris in 2015. So, dear Ehsan, Mr. Ehsan, I'll try to play the video. Should I try it, or I have time for 2 to 3 minutes?
Though you have covered your time, but if it's you think it's worth, you can go ahead. If it is 2 to 3 minutes, yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. I'll try that. The device should be there. I don't know how much the loud the mobile phone device would be, but I'll try.
Yeah, I'll let you know, but try to be with this video. Try to conclude your presentation after this
Yeah,
video.
it's the last video. It is the last. It's
That
only the video.
that
Yeah.
that's great. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you.
हमने ना एक फॉर्म ड्राफ्ट किया था
Uh, dear Mr. Ehsan,
Yes, there is some issue with
I
voice
think
here.
you could, yeah. It's not that much louder, no? So I think I
Yeah,
really appreciate if you could disseminate this video as well, because it's it's very close to my heart. This 2 to 3 minutes Leonardo
yeah,
DiCaprio, that is UN messenger for climate change, and it's very close to my heart, this climate change video. So I will be very appreciating if you could kindly disseminate this
yeah,
video
yeah.
later as
Don't
well.
worry. We will
So
provide it to the audience and on our
with this,
website with our
yeah,
presentation. Done, done.
thank you. I'll really appreciate. With this, I'll conclude my talk. I hope I have been audible, and it has been somewhat useful in the context of the energy conservation. And if you have any questions, kindly, I'll thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Naveed Anwar. Please stay with us for question answer and session. So thank you again. It
Sure.
was indeed very interesting information. At least I never thought of such techniques so deeply. Simply by applying such techniques and planning routing of municipal vehicles, we can save a lot of energy, fuel. So yes, we have questions for you. There is question from this Nepal that what mechanism to increase the density of municipal solid waste, rather at point of collection or maybe during transportation. So you initially discussed
Yep,
something
yep.
about density. So can you elaborate that
Yep.
what techniques would be helpful?
There are a number of techniques that could be used. There could be some mechanical compaction could be used at generation point, at collection point, at storage point, and then manual compaction could be there, whereby you could manually compact your waste, or secondly, there could be this the waste that could be baled one, and then there could be a non-baled waste, the baleable waste, and with the baled you have if you have bale of this waste, it could increase the density. And then there could be mechanical compaction. We have this nowadays in efficiently, where waste is collected efficiently in South SAARC regions. We have mechanical compactors that could compact your waste mechanically. So and then the ideal location, I think, for this compaction could be transfer station, where you could compact your waste, and you could commute it then to your disposal, or after compaction you could the waste only that could be compacted. So the organic waste cannot be compacted because it is carrying moisture of like 60% moisture roughly, so it will result into the leachate production. Only the compaction could be applied to your non-organic waste. And if you have applied that compaction at the transfer station, like steel, like plastic, like other materials, so then you could have this refuse after the segregation. So then you have your refuse dry fuel at hand, and then you could only directly go for incineration rather than going for disposal. But if you are going to commute it for disposal, in order to enhance its density, you could enhance the density of non-organic, because it is not carrying that much moisture. Thank you.
Thank you, Naveed Saab. It's quite elaborated very well. So there was another audience, Mr. Imtiaz Hussain, who is, I believe he might have joined later. So he briefly want to know about the techniques you already elaborated in well detail. So he's wanted to know the techniques for routing. So can you explain him in a minute in a quick manner for his understanding, and then I'll go for another question.
Yeah, specifically a segment of the routing. Basically, I have explained that a in a very thank you. So in a nutshell, it could be like firstly we need to decrease the number of vehicles required for routing. For that, we could work at generation point, collection point, storage point, transfer station point, and then there could be treatment and recovery, whereby you could reduce the waste generated. And in that terms, if you have reduced the waste generated, and then if you haven't been able to reduce the waste generation at the generation source, then you could reduce the volume of your waste, and by compaction, by density, or at transfer station you could reduce the volume by converting into treatment into biogas and RDF, and at blocks level. So you will have a very small waste to commute to. And then there could be routing. In routing case, there should be certain approaches have been, and for the same purpose, because some audience might be interested to revisit the presentation, so I have not explained this in bullets. I have inserted lines, small lines explaining the routing principle as well. So the dead end street should be not be collected, like there should be rush vehicles should not be commuting during the rush hours, and the large capacity vehicles should be used. Mechanical compaction vehicles should be used while collecting the waste. So all these things could be used, and this minimization of the vehicle loading will promote fuel conservation, and that is actually energy conservation, and that will also increase the air quality and all that other aspects.
That's great. That's great. Thank you, Lalit sir. There is one another interesting question that knowing our South Asian culture, do you have any idea for segregation at source? What techniques are used? Like if I refer to some advanced world techniques, they use different applications and QR codes, and then segregation bags are handled very tactfully and systematically. So what you can propose techniques, and do you have any knowledge about such practices either in any member states of South Asia, or you can propose some good suggestion keeping in view the local culture?
Dear Mr. Hassan, that's a very interesting question, and it's a very tricky question as well. Can I take the liberty to answer this question frankly, if you may allow me? The real life scenario. I would like
Yeah,
to
sure.
discuss the real life scenario.
Yeah, yeah, why not?
Yeah.
Why not? But please
So
be
I
brief
have been
because we are
working.
already short
Yeah,
of time.
yeah. I'll be brief. I'll be brief. While I was working with Lahore Waste Management Company earlier, and now in the capacity of this faculty member, where we have this quite a good joint collaborations, where we regularly do certain awareness walks, or on the segregation we have installed bins on the communities as well. But I think there is before promoting waste segregation at source, we as a municipalities need to develop this segregation at later stages. For instance, you are collecting this, and people do, and then there is a, if you have this segregation at source practice, firstly, people need to be aware, educated. We have done this some certain communities, but once that waste is being segregated at source, it will again get mixed in the transfer station, in the collection point. So my point was, if you unless you have this treatment technology, and then your segregation until disposal point is basically sustained segregation, then the segregation at source will be some of some use. At basically at SAARC or SAARC region, at SAARC countries, unfortunately, at least at Lahore, we do not have any segregation facility at transfer station point and the disposal point. So there is no benefit in collecting the waste while segregated. So this is a very we should promote this segregation not only at source, but at until unless it is promoted at the very last functional element of waste management, it won't be yielding any fruitful results. And yes, we do have some certain techniques like installation of separate bins are there. We have color coded bags, give them color coded bags, and this could be there. But we could start off with these techniques, and if there are these bins and there are big communal containers are there that are color coded, and then we could have some incentives as well. For instance, in Europe, one friend was telling me that they basically charge you certain additional 25 cents for a bottle, and then you again, if you recycle, insert in a recycling machine or a container, then you get your 25 cents back. So then there could be some incentive. But my point remains the same, that unless it is inculcated in the whole waste management chain, it won't be yielding any fruitful results. Thank you.
Thank you, Naveed. I am surprised there are a lot of questions for you. I wanted to wind up this session, but I cannot overlook the questions being shared. Let me
I am more than
clarify
happy.
my
I am more than
question.
happy. I am more than happy.
Thank you so much, but we are also short of time as well because our next presenter is on standby mode.
Yeah, yeah,
So there is one
yeah.
question from Afghanistan which is related to financial mechanism. So I'll request them that they should wait for our last presentation. It's fully covering this financial mechanism for this solid waste
Yeah.
management.
Otherwise, I only will be giving it a 1 second, 10 seconds answer. For
Please.
financial mechanism, one should
Hmm.
refer to the carbon finance basically fund that is being set up in after COP21 in Paris, that aims for the contribution of $100 billion for the developing countries for up to 2025, and again from 2025 onwards $100 billion as a base, and it should be more than $100 billion from 2025 per annum basis. So the finance should be there. It could be obtained from at a state level. If there is will, the will is there.
किसान को नहीं पसंद आया.
Well, Naveed sir, let me clarify to one of our very enthusiastic participant who has a group of, they are participating in a group form. Mr. Ravi Bakir, I believe your both questions are most relevant to our next immediate presenter who is working on waste to energy area. So I believe I'll put these two questions to him, or maybe they are covered indirectly at that time. So let's move to our next segment. So once again, thank you very much, Mr. Naveed Anwar. We are really grateful for your time and your participation. Thank you so much.
It's my pleasure. It's my pleasure. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to interact with SAARC officials. Thank you.
Thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, our next presenter is Dr. Abdusattar Nizami. Dr. Nizami is a PhD in Sustainable Gaseous Biofuel from the School of Civil and Environmental Engineering, University College, Cork, Ireland. He worked at the University of Toronto, Canada as postdoctoral fellow in the research areas of alternative fuels and life cycle studies. He is currently working as head of solid waste management unit at the Center of Excellence in Environmental Studies of King Abdulaziz University, Saudi Arabia. Besides, he is also serving as a member of executive committee for King Abdulaziz University International Indexed Journals and Books. He has published more than 100 papers on the topics of renewable energy, alternative fuels, waste to energy, catalytic pyrolysis, anaerobic digestion, and resource recovery. He has delivered over 23 invited talks to various national and international forums. His work is cited more than 3,430 times in the peer review press with a total impact factor of 300 and H index of 32. He has played the leading role in establishing the energy and solid waste laboratory at SAARC. He has been actively involved in community services and consultation to the various international organizations, including the National Research Agency, NRA of France, Government Agency of National Science Center, Poland, World Bank, UNEP, in providing sustainable solutions for energy and waste related issues. May I request Dr. Abdusattar Nizami to share his experience of how successful are waste to energy projects internationally and guide our municipalities in our region regarding implementing waste to energy projects successfully. So over to you, Dr. Abdusattar Nizami.
उसकी तस्वीर भी आ रही है निजामी साहब की ओर.
Can you hear me and see me?
Yeah, at this moment you are very clear and very audible. So please continue with your presentation.
That's good. Thank you so much for such a nice introduction. My warm regards to all of the participants. I'm also very grateful to the SAARC Energy Center and the organizer of this webinar, including Ehsan and Shoaib Ahmed, for inviting me to give a talk on waste to energy options in the municipal solid waste management. My talk is about the need and the necessity of waste to energy technology, particularly in the developing world, and also what is available and the future options and the promising technologies for waste to energy, especially for the developing world. As we all know, the world population is still increasing exponentially. Like giving you a number, it is anticipated that by 2025, the world population is going to increase up to 8.2 billions. And the Asia, Middle East, Africa, Latin America, and the SAARC region are the places where most of this growth will occur. As we all know, due to increasing population, urbanization, industries, and the raised living standards as well. When we have the population increase, urbanizations, it's quite natural to expect that the energy demands and the need will also increase exponentially. And particularly if I talk about the Asia region, and every year there's an increase in the energy demand at the rate of 3.7%. Fortunately and unfortunately, we are still relying on the fossil fuel as a main primary source to fulfill our energy demands and the requirements. And we all have witnessed and observed all of the devastating effects of the fossil fuel in terms of climate change and the global warmings. And we have seen the examples of floods, tornadoes, hurricanes, tsunami, the change in the weather pattern all over the world. So we know that's what we are facing as a result of our only and slowly relying on the fossil fuel as a primary source. And here's the need that we have to look the alternative options, including waste to energy as well. So obviously it's quite natural to expect that when the energy demand, the population, urbanization, industrial growth is all goes, and then the generation rate of the municipal solid waste per capita per day is also increasing, I will say exponentially and significantly. In the next 15 years, it is calculated and predicted that the municipal solid waste generation rate per person per day is going to increase from 1.2 kg to 1.5 kg. And if I talk about the global, by 2025, the world generation of municipal solid waste is also going to increase, and the number goes to up to 2.56 billion tons. That's alarming. That's a huge number indeed. And in most of the developing world and developing nations, cities, the municipal solid waste is the city's single largest budgetary item. That means if the city economy is good, then we see the municipal solid waste collection, transportation, and disposal schemes are fantastic, wonderful. And if the city economy is not good, then we see the devastating effects of the waste, not only to the climate and the environment, but also to the public health. And overall, the sustainable disposal of municipal solid waste in the developing world is at infancy level, where most of the focus and the activities are concentrated only on the collection, transportation, and disposal to the dump sites and the landfill sites, which are mostly non-engineering landfill sites, and they are open landfill site, open dump sites. And if I talk about the stats about the collection systems, in most of the developing nations, around 60% of the waste is collected and goes to the landfill sites. But while the remaining 40% still lies on the empty plots, street sides, along the roads, railway lines, drains, and low areas. So what we have to do with so much waste, if I talk about the SAARC region, we have every year millions of tons of municipal solid waste, and it's getting up, increasing exponentially. So as being a scientist and researcher, I always propagate and advise and talk about this, that we shouldn't be shocked about this. Okay, well, we have so much waste, but there are ways, alternative ways. We should not lose the hope. We have to be opportunist in a way that's if you see, I always give this example, the cats, when they see a garbage bag, they are more opportunist. They see so many food items for them. So similarly, we have to look the waste in a different way, in a different perception. And this is something not new. That's it has been a witness and has been described in all over the world. That the waste is no more a waste. It's not a refuse. It's not a garbage anymore, but it's a source of valuable source, and a range of products we can made from this waste in terms of energy, recyclable materials, value-added products, chemicals, fertilizer, and so on and so on. But we have to manage our waste wisely and in a sustainable way to get all these value-added products at the end, where we do not have any more waste. So in terms of waste management in the municipalities or in the developing world, as we can see, you can see that this slide, that's mostly the schemes and the concentration, our focus point is the collection, and then we have the transportation, and then we process the waste. At the end, the processing here is a partial recycling, and then we have the disposal. But it has to be other way around. We have to have the integrated solid waste management systems. Thus, after the transportation to some point, some place, it has to go through in detail the recycling system, waste to energy systems, recovery systems, where all of these value-added products are recovered through legal policies, through institutional arrangement, through operation management, through appropriate technology for that country, for that city as well, and have to have the subsidies, financial management, and the public has to be on board, participated. This is what we call integrated solid waste management system, which unfortunately most of the cities in developing countries, SAARC region, are missing at the moment. And here comes the concept of waste to energy. Basically, this concept is amazing, fantastic, in a way that any nation or country who want to cut its fossil fuel addiction, or reliance or dependence on the fossil fuel, he has this option of waste to energy, a promising option to look alternative, like beside the fossil fuel, he can have this waste to energy technologies in his country. And the possibilities for converting waste to energy are many. There's a range of the options and the technologies, but those technologies really depends on the waste types and source, its compositions, what's end use application, available infrastructure, and the conversion technologies. Giving you a few examples of these waste to energy technologies: pyrolysis, anaerobic digestion, incineration, transesterification, gasification, refuse dry fuel, plasma arc gasification, etc., etc. Here I want to clarify one of the concepts, because I work in Saudi, and I have the opportunity to travel all around the world and to work with the world leading organization like World Bank, UN, UNEP, about waste to energy technologies. There's a very, I must say, a big misunderstanding or misconception exists in the public perception when they talk about the waste to energy technologies. Waste to energy technologies is not always about the thermal technologies. Like when people say they have a bad press or bad media, or the critics about waste to energy, they say when we talk about the waste to energy, they say it's incineration. It's only the burning, is incineration. While this is not the incineration only, there is a range of waste to energy technologies. Broadly, we categorize them into thermal and non-thermal. Under the thermal technologies, we have incineration. But when we say the incineration, the concept has been changed. It has been evolved. It's not like 2 decades ago when we see the open burning and we see all of the air pollutants coming out, the dark coming out. It's not nowadays. It's not that incineration in a way. And then we have the gasification. Then we have a pyrolysis, plasma arc gasification, and among the non-thermal waste to energy technologies, we have the options of anaerobic digestion, fermentation, transesterification, mechanical, biological treatment. They are also classified on the base of chemical technologies, physiochemical technologies, thermal and non-thermal. But it really depends on the situation of the country or the city and the waste composition. So I hope I clarify this concept, that when we talk about the waste to energy, it's not always about the incineration, it's not always about the burning of the waste. It's now the concept has been evolved and developed beyond that basic concept. And this is very important, when the choice of the waste to energy technology are the criteria for any nation or any society or city who want to develop the waste to energy technologies at his city, at his country. He has to look practically and realistically the waste type and the amounts and the composition, the waste characterization. This is the fundamental criteria of developing or selecting any waste to energy technologies. I have been seeing many, even the literature, there have been they have explained so many waste to energy technologies who have failed practically one of the fundamental or core reason was the waste type and the amounts and composition and waste characterization. It's not always about the importing of the waste technologies from the west to east and adopting is and copying and pasting and developing as it. No, the country has to look its waste itself before developing, before selecting any appropriate waste energy technologies. I give you an example of such failure. I work in Saudi. I have seen, like in Mecca, as most of you know, during the Hajj time, there's a slaughtering of millions of goats and sheep, and they propose this waste to energy technology of incineration for slaughterhouse waste. So basically, among the slaughterhouse waste, when they start putting this the blood waste into the incineration, obviously no one can expect energy or something valuable by putting liquid in an incineration. It won't work. So practically, this incineration plant was failed in Makkah by giving you the reason again, because they didn't look into the waste composition of the city. So this is very critical. This is very important. And then we also have to look into the amounts of gas emission from waste to energy technologies. This is very important for the public perceptions. But as I said before, nowadays there are technologies, there are filters, there are scrubbing systems, even there's incineration plants. So they make sure all of the air pollutants releasing from the plant at the end of the operations are no more harmful to the environment, are no more harmful to the public health, but they are cleaner, they are only hydrocarbons. So, and beside this, we have to look before deciding about the waste energy technologies, that's the local recycling and waste disposal practices. Because when I see in the Pakistani situations, I can see there is a huge, the recycling ratio is much higher than like the waste disposal. So we have to balance out this, like when we decide about waste energy technology. Obviously, we do not want to cut the recycling, because recycling is also important for the developing nation, especially for the low and middle income families. So we have to look like these options in a broader picture to decide in appropriate and in a sustainable way. And then we have to look into the environmental and economic benefits. After having of developing waste to energy technologies, we have to look the local weather and other factors. We cannot have the composting on anaerobic digestions, mesophilic in a very hot climate open. So we have to look all these factors very carefully. And we also have to look the public awareness and the behavior. Like if we say the incineration and burning might be, we have critics. The public is not ready to have the incineration in middle of the city, let's say. And then we have to see this is very important, that's the form of the what product actually we are looking for. And also, like, let's say if we produce biogas from anaerobic digestion in Pakistan, then we have to see the market of the biogas. What's is a market available, or we are using the biogas in CHP plants. If we use the biogas in CHP plant, the products then will be heat. Are we running the heat, or we need the electricity out of it? Or if we enrich the biogas as called methane, enriched methane as like a compressed natural gas in the vehicle. So we have to look all these options very critically, very carefully before deciding about the waste to energy technologies. So far, if I talk about the progress and the development which has been done both in the scientific and the industrial communities. So far work has been done on the single waste or single waste type technology. Let's say if I talk about the animal waste, so there are technologies, fats, tallow, bloods. The fats and tallow are very good for rendering and transesterification to produce biodiesel and other products. Blood is very good as a good substrate for anaerobic digestion to produce biogas out of it. And then we have the meat processing waste. Then we have manure. Manure is sometimes good for anaerobic digestion, sometimes for the nutrient recovery facility for composting. So far the people have, the researchers, scientists, they have worked so far on the single waste type and the single waste to energy technology. So I give you an example of, and the waste to energy technology is not a new concept. It's a very old concept, and it has been successfully implemented in all over the world. I must say that it's not in some country or some region. It's everywhere. We can see the plants in all over the world. I just put few of the example as a snapshot for you, giving you this idea that the waste to energy plants exist. They are working fine, and as a result of these plants, they are producing electricity, they are producing heat, they are producing biogas, they are producing so many value-added products. Let's say I put in this slide waste to energy plants in different parts of the China, and then here are few example of waste to energy plants in Japan, in different cities. And then if we talk about the waste to energy plants in the rest of the world, we can see in Canada, West Indies, Malaysia, India, Russia, New Jersey, and then in West Indies, Singapore. So these plants exist everywhere, but most of these plants are based on the so far like a thermal principles. Most, if we go back, if you see the operation or the technologies being used in these plants, waste to energy technologies, are based on thermal principles. Either they are incineration, either they are pyrolysis, either they are gasification. They are using the different temperature range to treat their waste and to have the value-added products at the end. I didn't put the other non-thermal because they are quite well known. Everyone knows about the anaerobic digestions, fermentation, ethanol, methanol, biogas, all those products. But mostly the thermal technologies are successfully implemented at commercial scale, at industrial scale, while the non-thermal technologies are still progressing. And few of the example we can see if I talk about the anaerobic digestion at commercial or industrial stage, while the fermentation and other technologies are still under development stages. This slide, I guess, the most important of my presentation. So far, I'm sure you know the single waste to energy technology suitable for a single waste or waste type or substrate or feedstock. But the point is not that the single waste to technology is obviously, I given you an example, is a success. It's working fine. The people perception is good because many of the such plants, they develop in the middle of the cities. They invite the people, they make sure all of their emissions are environment friendly. There's nothing harmful coming out from their incineration plants. So but the point is, I raise these questions always, like in scientific and for brainstorming. That's can any of the waste to energy technology can achieve the zero waste concept? I'm sure you know this concept, zero waste concept. They say there's no more waste left for landfills. All of the waste, 100% of the waste is being utilized for useful purposes. So can any single waste to energy technologies can achieve this concept, zero waste concept? The second question is any of the conversion or waste to energy technology can replace the fossil fuel dependency or sustainability in an immediate way, in a short-term way? And then we see that is any of these waste to energy technologies are capable enough to compete with the other renewable energy systems like wind, solar, geothermal, nuclear, etc., etc. Perhaps so far, if I conclude the so far research that has been done, the development that has been done so far, the answers might be no for all of these questions. So here, but I must say that the research is going on, the development is going on, but so far the answer for these questions are unfortunately no. But there is a way out. There's no dead end. There's no closed street. As a researcher, as scientists, we always look the alternative. We always look the hope and light. So here is the solution, actually. Like when after my postdoc, I joined the King Abdulaziz University. So me and my research group, after establishing my research group and team, we reintroduced this concept in the scientific community and in the professional and the industrial community. And we gave them the solutions. We gave them the answers that I showed you, that to overcome the limitation and the challenges of single waste to energy technologies. There is a sustainable solution for all of these challenges, limitation, difficulties. If you integrate your waste to energy technologies under one umbrella, under one roof concept of waste-based biorefinery or waste-driven factory. It's a bit complicated concept, but I try to explain you this in a way. And 5 years ago, it was a huge success for me and my research team, and we were quite successful in the scientific community and the local public and the policy and decision makers as well, and the industrial communities as well. Because basically we are trying to give the solution for not, let's say I work in Saudi, and there is a food waste is the most highest the food waste stream. Around 50% is the food waste, and then there is a plastic is the main second stream. So we are not giving the solution of only food waste or plastic waste or cardboard waste or the metals or the cans or the paper waste. No, we are giving the solution of all of the municipal solid waste at one place, and this one place we call is waste driven factory, where basically you can bring all of your waste at one place. That's for sure is a tipping and a receiving area. You segregate your waste as per the technology, as per the process, and then you can see like in this slide, you take all of the organics, food waste, green and blood waste are depending on the country and the city, municipal solid waste characterization, and then it goes to the pre-treatment steps, and then it's we take out all of the liquids and it goes to the nutrient recovery facilities, or the solids goes to the organic fertilizer, and the liquid goes to the thermophilic anaerobic digestion plants, and then we produce biogas. And for sure, biogas can be used in CHP plants to produce electricity and heat. Biogas can be goes to the upgrading biogas unit, where it's converted into compressed natural gas. Because this is the concept is the same, because in biogas we have roughly around 40 to 60% methane, and if we increase the methane contents more than 90% and compress, then it's work as a natural gas. Like as we see in Pakistan, the vehicles and transportation running on natural gas, so they can also run on the compressed natural gas produced from anaerobic digestion instead. So, and after treating all of the organic waste, we have the plastics. For plastic, we have pyrolysis, we can have gasification, we can have plasma or gasification. We have a range of technologies, but it's really depend on the plastic types and composition and characteristics as well. And from pyrolysis, we have produced the liquid oil, pyrolysis oil, and that oil can goes to the CHP plant, combined heat and power plants. And when we produce the heat from this and the electricity from CHP plant, so that heat can goes to the anaerobic digestion, can also fulfill the rendering and transesterification plants. So in short terms, I must say that this is a holistic approach, is a more sustainable concept, where the product, where the heat requirements, the electricity requirement of one process or one waste to energy technology is being fulfilled, is being met with the other technologies product, other technologies heat, and other technologies electricity. Means at the end of the day, this factory or this waste-based biorefinery do not need any external heat. It does not require any external electricity. It is a self-sustainable system which can fulfill and suffice the requirements by each others. And at the end of the day, we have a net electricity, we have a net heat, we have a net value-added products in terms of nutrients, in terms of fertilizer, in terms of chemicals. And we can also connect this concept with the other renewable energy system, like wind energy, like solar systems, and we can connect the electricity produced from this to our national electric grid as well. So I give you a case study of the Saudi Arabia. This is something I'm sure very informative for you. Because when we started working in Saudi, we have realized and we have seen that there's no energy and recovery facility exists in Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. So most of the municipal solid waste is being collected and transported and disposed to the landfill or dump sites without any treatment, without any recovery. And most of the landfill sites over there are again open landfill site. Among the mountains is non-engineering, non-sanitary landfill site. And if I talk about the recycling, it's only with the metals and cardboards, and the ratio is very low. It's around 10 to 15% of the total municipal solid waste. And as a result, like all of the putrescible waste, like waste, and the waste, as I said before, above half of the waste, around 50% waste is the food waste. And when it goes to an open landfill site, for sure we know as a result of aerobic and anaerobic decomposition, we have methane and all other greenhouse gas pollutants and emissions. And not only this, the leachate and the goes to the groundwater and soil contamination. And this is not here. The public health issues are also very alarming over there, is concerning, is increasing with every day. And every year around 15 million tons of municipal solid waste is produced in KSA, and the average rate of the municipal solid waste per capita per day is 1.4 kg, and that's the highest if we compare with the rest of the Middle East or Arab countries. The food and plastic waste are the two largest waste streams, and that's cover around 70% of the total waste in most of the cities. So basically, my group, Solid Waste Management Research Unit, has started to explore these options, have to high-rise the issues, and then we try to draft the letters to the government officials, and it was a huge success for my research team and my research center in a way that the government have realized, and they took our recommendation and our research findings of my team. And they have included first time in their very famous Vision 2030 that they realized this potential of waste to energy, and they have included this in this vision, this target to produce 9.5 gigawatts of renewable energy from different sources, including waste. So even the previous governmental regime, they also recognize our research finding, and they gave the target to produce 3 gigawatt of electricity from waste to energy plants in the country. So giving you more in detail, like how our work was so successful in the country and in the rest of the scientific community and the rest of the Middle East or Arabian countries in a way, that we map out each of the Saudi Arabian cities, city by city. And we giving you an example of Makkatul Mukarramah city. As you most know, that this is a very holy city where we have millions of Muslims every year to perform religious rituals, Hajj and Umrah. And they produce, obviously, as a result, we have a huge municipal solid waste generation in Makkah city. So we did the waste characterization as a first step in Makkah city, and we characterize each of the waste, and we look into the options, waste to energy option, the recycling option, and we come to this conclusion that around 88% of the municipal solid waste that been produced in Makkah is very suitable for waste to energy technologies, and rest 12% is very suitable for recycling system, for recycling schemes. And we characterize and classify each of the waste. Let's say for recycling, we conclude that the glass, cardboard, metals, and aluminium cans are very ideally suitable for recycling, for reuse and resale point of view. And then we have the food waste fractions, and then for food waste fractions, including the fats, oils, slaughterhouse waste, we have come the anaerobic digestion and transesterification option. Our waste to energy technologies are very suitable. And as a result of this, we know we produce methane, glycerol, biodiesel as a products. Then we have the plastic waste fraction, the second main fraction, and we concluded that the pyrolysis or gasification are very suitable to produce liquid fuel or the gases in terms of syngas and then the rest streams was paper, leather, wood, and other streams. And then if we use this, a very classical concept, very emerging and promising concept in waste to energy, refuse dry fuel. It is a solid fuel. It's a solid pellets we made from these very solid feedstock, and we replace the coal basically. And these solid fuel are pellets in been used in the incineration plants, big plants that use coal to produce electricity. I give you an example like to raise your interest about our work, and we calculated, like I just give you a snapshot, the economic and environmental benefits of waste recycling in Makkah. So just by recycling 4 items: cardboard, glass, metals, aluminium, the economic and environmental benefits are huge. So we calculated that only by recycling these 4 items, we can save around 5.6 thousand tons emission of methane. So that's huge in terms of global warming potential. And the net revenue of, we can have around 113 million Saudi Riyal will be added every year to the national economy. And this huge money is only from one city. And this is also important to know that it's only coming by recycling just 4 items, just 4 waste items. And then because we give the concept of waste factory, where we have 2 units, the recycling unit and waste to energy units. And we calculated the individual benefits, economic and environmental benefits, and the collective benefits. So in terms of collective benefits, a total net revenue of around 758 million Saudi Riyal can be generated from this waste factory only in Makkah city. And this revenue, the savings, net revenue is mostly, as we know, will come from the landfill diversion, from the electricity generation, and from recycling. Although the concept or the principle of carbon credits is still not implemented in Saudi. So if we believe as scientists and researchers that if the concept of carbon credit is implemented in the country, the benefits can go even higher. So, and also in terms of the saving from oil and gas, the number are very promising and significant and huge. Around 1.95 million barrel of oil will be saved just from this factory, and around 11.2 million cubic feet of natural gas will be saved, with a cost saving of around 485 million Saudi Riyals. So just giving you a brief number. Otherwise, all of our work has been published in very high impact factor journal, and they are publicly available. Our reports are available online, so anyone can access and can go through all these numbers like economics. I'm just giving you a very simple the number in a very simplistic and easy way to digest, to understand. Otherwise, we did the very detailed life cycle assessment study to come up all of these economic and environmental benefits. So in terms of our success in Saudi or King Abdulaziz University at my lab, so we have developed a small pilot scale pyrolysis system to convert different types of plastic into pyrolysis liquid. This liquid is like a pyrolysis oil, as you can see in the bottles. Initially it's a bit crude, it's not purified, and then we use different treatment to purify the oil to make it light oil, and we have checked its suitability to blend with the conventional diesel and use as a transport fuel. So this is our 2-stage batch pyrolysis systems we have developed at our lab and King Abdulaziz University. So it's all automated control panel. We have a pyrolysis reactor where we feed different types of plastics, are single, for example, PP plastic, polypropylene, polyethylene, PET plastic, are high density polyethylene plastics. So and then we have a catalytic reforming reactors where we use different types of catalysts to purify our liquid oil, because the oil we produce is a heavy oil. So in terms of the cracking, we try to make a lighter oil in terms of carbon chains and the other products. So we have a condenser, you can see, then we condense the all of the vapors that's coming out from the pyrolysis reactor and pass through all of the catalyst chamber, and then we have the oil collection assembly. So in terms of the I have among many of my PhD students, two of my PhD students from particularly from Pakistan have worked on this system, and they are now serving in different universities here as assistant professor. So in terms of the benefits of this waste-based factory, so here I again go back to the initial concept of my presentation. What we are trying to propagate, what we are trying to say you, that waste to energy technology is a solution, is a promising solution, but it's not a complete solution. It's not an ultimate solution. So ultimate solution is when we integrate these waste to energy technologies at one place, and we treat all different types of waste at one place under one roof concept. Then we have a multiple benefits instead of getting one benefits, and we have a multiple products, and our economic revenue, our environmental benefits obviously is much higher if we compare with the single waste to energy technologies. So if we have such waste-based factories or waste-based biorefineries in our cities, in our countries, in SAARC regions, the benefits are huge. Obviously, the research and development, because many of these processes, when we integrate them, are under research and development stage so far. So our young youth, our young local students, researchers, and scientists will learn about these new and cutting edge and latest technologies, and we as a result, a holistic approach, we will be able to solve our waste problems. We will be able to minimize the environmental pollutions, whether related to air pollution, soil pollution, or groundwater or the water pollution, and new businesses, new job opportunities will generate in our countries. And having all these benefits on one hand, obviously the public health will be improved. So here I give you a successful example of my and my research team's work on waste to energy and the waste-based biorefinery or factory in Saudi Arabia. So we were invited by the government, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, by the government to design and specialized training courses for the governmental environmental inspector for their environmental protection agency. So we designed two courses and we give them like in a lecture format to the government officials, engineers, inspectors, and the government want to send them after this training program straight to UK and USA for their master degree programs for further education. And they have this vision that after returning back from UK and USA, they're gonna be the head of their environmental protection agencies departments. So we designed two courses. My idea, or you can say my ambitions of sharing these slides with you is that because when I was invited for this webinar, so I was thinking in a different way. So I thought, okay, let's propose this training courses to SAARC Energy Center as well. That's like and I see the necessity and the need of such courses in SAARC regions, including Pakistan and other the SAARC region countries, because again we have our waste management system quite and fancy level, and we need these training courses not only to the students, graduates, researchers, and scientists, but also to the policy and decision makers, to the officials, to the inspectors, to the engineers, like who are really working into the different agencies in SAARC region or SAARC regions, including Pakistan. So in the first, this integrated waste management system, the course we designed is about the solid waste management, about the municipal, industrial waste, waste to energy technologies, options, the concept of waste-based biorefineries, how it works, and what are the economic and environmental benefits if we develop such biorefineries in any country. landfilling, the 3R concept or 4R concept, construction and demolition waste management, hospital waste management. The second course we design and deliver, we were delivering these courses last 2 years successfully to the government officials in Saudi Arabia. The second course was sustainability, where we introduced them the concepts, the sustainability, the pillars, the how the sustainability works, how it can be applied to different departments, how it can be applied to the municipal solid waste management system, to the different official levels, and about the sustainable construction activities, sustainable resource management, smart building concept, how it can be practically implemented in a city, and then about the sustainable and resilient cities. And I was also involved in as a consultant with the World Bank to produce different documents to have the feasibility and assessment study for Saudi Arabia. And we did this project quite successfully with the World Bank about the solid waste management in Jeddah and the Dammam region. So such studies are very important. Like such studies are, you can say, fundamentals, are critical to make a policy, to make an integrated waste management system to any country or any systems. So again, I see a lot of needs. I must say the imperative need of the time in the SAARC countries, including Pakistan, to have such feasibility and assessment studies, a comprehensive studies at a national level about the waste management systems, municipal solid waste management system, about the waste to energy options and technologies. So I was also involved in this UK Awarda financed company to have a white policy paper for the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. So I wrote the foreword, and also I wrote many chapters and critically reviewed this document. And this is white policy paper for Kingdom of Saudi Arabia we wrote. So similarly, like in similar pattern, I proposed to the SAARC Energy Center to have such white policy papers. Like, okay, we have a comprehensive studies we done with the feasibility and assessment. Then we go with the policies paper. Such policy paper, obviously called white policy paper, before the government take them, the policy and decision maker take them to make a real policy. So we need such studies in Pakistan and rest of the SAARC countries. So this is another studies we did for the different closure plan as a consultant in Saudi Arabia. So this was my latest work with the UNEP, and this we did. I contributed 2 chapters into this regional outlook report. It's called West Asia Solid Waste Outlook Report. So this is financed by UNEP and the SAARC, Arab Region and Europe Agency. So basically, I cover all of the regional status of waste management in the Arab countries. Particularly, I focus on the specific regional features like Hajj and Umrah during Ramadan time, during Hajj period in Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, how the waste is been managed, and what should be the way forward in terms of the waste to energy, in terms of waste biorefinery. So this UNEP report is we have successfully completed. Hopefully in next few weeks this report will be online, publicly online, and this is a huge asset, I must say, valuable for the whole region, West Asia. So similarly, I dream and I propose, I strongly recommend to SAARC Energy Center to have such a SAARC Asia report on waste to wealth or waste to energy. Besides, I'm also actively involved as a national and international reviewer and editors. I work with different governments like a Polish government, French governments, as a reviewer and auditor of different research proposals and grants proposal submitted to their governments on waste to energy technologies. Besides, I'm like a privileged, and I feel quite satisfied as a freelance writer in electronic and printed media. Often my interviews are published in different newspaper, including Arab News, very famous in the Saudi Arabia, Arab World, Saudi Gazette, Makkatul Mukarramah newspaper, and my interviews are published in Forbes magazine, Enviro Cities, and I'm also actively write different blogs like Ecomina, Bioenergy Consult. Again, under the concept of waste to energy technologies.
Well, Dr.
And
Saab,
I
thank you
also
very
like
much. Thank you very much. Really impressed with your profile and your knowledge and your experience. We are a bit short of time, so I'll have to intervene. And there are a lot of questions for you. I don't know how I'll manage so many questions in such a short period. I may have to compromise with some questions. So once again, thank you very much, Dr. Nizami. It was indeed a very informative and detailed discussion or interesting futuristic scenario building of this waste to energy models. So we have a lot of questions. If I start with, I don't know where from I can start. So there is one question from Afghanistan. Rather, two people have, both are from Afghanistan. Mr. Aman Zai from Kabul and Mr. Masood. Also, they have similar question that the segregation of waste is a major issue in SAARC countries. Is there any specific technology for waste to energy for mixed waste? Like if you go for waste to energy without segregation, what could be a good model, or whether it is viable or not?
Thank you so much, and I appreciate and I regards to our Afghan attendees. I welcome them, warmly welcome them to attend this webinar. For sure, there are the two types, technically and scientifically, there are two types of recycling systems. The one is called clean recycling systems, and this clean recycling system is for such countries where there is a segregation in place, where the waste is already been segregated at source, at homes, at offices. So there's no much hassle at the end at the recycling plants. So there's another system like they develop basically for developing countries is called dirty recycling systems, because if a recycling plant receive a mixed waste, so they can handle it. So nowadays there are technologies, there are treatment, there are procedures which can handle such mixed and dirty waste, which is not been segregated at source. So again, I must say that the point, like when we talk about the waste to energy, is it's not only about the technology, it's not only about the process and techniques that's already been in place and successfully tested, examined in many parts of the world. Sometimes we lack in terms of the legal framework, policies, right policies, government. There's no governmental subsidies in developing countries, and there are no initiatives, and there are no markets for the products, and therefore we see the failure of waste to energy technology in developing countries. Otherwise, there are technologies who can handle such mixed and dirty waste at one place and can have a value added products, electricity, energy, recyclable materials at the end. For sure, we can handle such waste.
That's great. Thank you very much. There is another question from Mr. Ali Bakir from Sreda, Bangladesh Power Division. His point is that if the moisture content is 60 to 70%, then how much energy can be extracted for per ton of waste from per ton?
Yeah, for sure. If the moisture is very high in the waste, and for sure, then we can let's say I because we have in our center we invited a researcher from Indonesia, from Malaysia, such a condition there where their waste is very high moisturized. So for sure, under such circumstances, we want recommend them the thermal technologies. For let's say the incineration is not suitable for such country situations, so we go to the other options like fermentation, anaerobic digestions, RDF, refuse dry fuels, composting, etc., etc. So and for sure we my colleague fellow from the Bangladesh, he knows from like if the moisture is very high, it's very ideally suitable for anaerobic digestion and fermentation, and we have products of biogas, bioethanol, biomethanol at the end. So for sure we cannot put our, as I said before, very moisturized, very watery waste to a incineration plant or to a burning plant, and we can expect that the efficiency of the plant or the process is very high. No, it will be very negligible.
Thank you very much. I have a short announcement for two of our special participants from Mr. Masood Manzai from Afghanistan, and there is another participant that's I've recently shared a question for you. This Mr. Ali Bakir from Bangladesh. They are joining our webinar in a group of delegates with high officials from their organization, government organization, and I offer them to open their mic if they have any direct questions. So, Mr. Masood Manzai, if you are interested, should I open your mic and you can go for a direct question?
Yes. Yeah.
Mr. Masood, can you hear me?
Yeah, can you hear me also?
Yeah, sure. Please go ahead. I welcome you on this webinar. Thank you very much for your attendance. And I would love if you can put your questions directly to our presenter.
Okay, here in Afghanistan,
Brief.
we have participants from different organizations. Especially, we have invited from Municipality of Kabul, and they have a question. Mr. Bezad has some question from you. Please, Mr. Bezad.
Please go ahead. Be brief. Yes.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Behzad Ghiyasi, and I'm the director of sanitation services responsible for the solid waste management of Kabul city. First, I would like to thank Mr. Nizami for his wonderful presentation. I'm truly impressed by what he has achieved so far at a very young age, I guess. Beside that, I just wanted to say that in Saudi Arabia, I'm sure your organization or the government of Saudi or the local government bodies, they have the luxury of budgets, or I would say even unlimited budgets for implementing such technologies or bringing in new methods. But in developing countries, especially in SAARC countries, we don't have that luxury. The budgets are always less, and the revenue of municipalities are not that much to support a very good integrated solid waste management system. So I wanted to know, how does the system of financial mechanisms work in Saudi Arabia? Do people pay taxes for waste collection or not? And beside that, one of the major challenges that we have in Kabul, and I'm sure that's the problem also in the SAARC countries as well, the landfills that we have. It's a big, gigantic dump site without any proper mechanisms. And I have been researching on implementing a system that is suitable for Kabul, and where it requires less budget, less technical expertise, and less machineries, of course. I've came through a system which is called the Fukuoka method. It's a system that the Japanese, our friends in Japan, they have came up with this. And I don't know if you have any idea about it, and have you ever came across this system or implemented in any other location? And do you think if it's suitable for this part of the world, for SAARC countries?
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate your question and the kind words. I really appreciate. For sure, I know as a researcher and scientist therefore I said that's like when we see the examples and the failures of waste to energy technologies in the developing countries, sometimes we just import the technology from the West and try to develop as it is without knowing our local infrastructure, local waste composition, and the legal framework, policies, and use application, whether our skills are capable enough to run the plant later on when our Western friends, they develop the plants and they go away. So, and I have seen such failures even in Saudi Arabia as well. And the second, for sure, I fully agree with you. The economic and the budget situation in Saudi Arabia is very different as compared to the SAARC countries, including Pakistan and Afghanistan. For sure, we do not have such luxuries and budgets where we can dream such fantastic and new technologies. And therefore, we always recommend that the technologies and the systems has to be developed according to the local conditions and the routes. And I put my website at the end of my slides, and also because We have developed such system. We call this material recovery facility, and such material recovery facility basically, and there are two types of material recovery facilities. For this is particularly for developing countries. One clean MRF system, one dirty or mixed MRF systems. If you ask me, like as a scientist and researcher, the recommendation or suggestion for SAARC region, for sure, based on our knowledge and expertise and experience, we would recommend not to compromise on recycling, because in our countries, Afghanistan and Pakistan, the recycling has much more weightage than waste to energy technologies for the time being, because we know the recycling is a ratio in our country is much more, and there are millions and thousands of low and middle income families associated with this recycling at a small level, so low level. So obviously, if we say that we develop one waste to energy plant in our system in Kabul, let's say, and it's take all of the waste and stop the recycling, so for sure we cannot cut the income and the jobs of such low or poor peoples. So we have to see their jobs and income as a broader picture as well. So we recommend that the recycling should be given more emphasis for the time being in our countries, and then we give the waste to energy as a second option. The recycling should be the first option, and the waste to energy technology second option, and then we go to the landfill side. For sure, if our recycling system is because so far our recycling system are not officially or governmental level regulated. They are being operated by waste scavengers or like unregulated way. So if the government take initiatives, make a plants, material recovery facilities, so we can generate a huge obviously the benefits, economic and environmental benefits can be much higher than what we are getting at the moment. And then we have a waste to energy as a second option, as a and then we go to the landfill sites. For sure, we will cover around half of the waste at initial stages at recycling, and waste to energy around 60% or even 70%, but practically it's around 50%. And then the rest of the waste to handle at the landfill is not as difficult as now we are facing at the moment. So, and then we have to see that obviously the landfill cannot be open, and making a sanitary and engineering landfill is very expensive. Thus, we also have to consider that. So we recommend that the recycling unit for each of the waste type can solve most of these problems in our countries.
Well, thank you very much for a detailed reply, and I'll also add for the financial point of part of the question that our next presenter has a lot of things in his pocket for us regarding the financing of such energy conservation projects implementation in our municipalities. But apart from that, one of our previous presenter, Mr. Anwar, is also interested to share something about financial aspect, and then I have requested him to stay with us because we have two particular questions for him as well. So over to you, Mr. Naveed.
Thank you, dear Mr. Hassan, and thank you, dear Dr. Nizami, for such a detailed and informative talk. It was quite informative experience for me as well, and I'm sure it would be helpful for so many other attendees as well. Thank you for your very informative talk. So, as far
Appreciate.
as financial mechanisms go, the capital costs to install such a plant could be yielded from carbon finance fund is there. And earlier it was under Kyoto Protocol, there was a finance fund where it was the technology transfer from developed to developing, or there was this mechanism where you could install such environmental friendly projects which are saving you at the end of the day carbon dioxide emissions or greenhouse gas emissions, and ultimately you could earn your carbon credits from that, and you could trade those carbon savings, carbon credits with the potential amount of money from the developed nation. So you could have that mechanism earlier. Now it's more I think it's more developed now. Under this Paris Agreement, you could have this $100 billion financing available up till 2025, and from 2025 onwards, the pledge is to increase the available finance to developing nations by the developed nations from $100 billion as a minimum to a larger capital resource available. Secondly, here I would like to quote Indian example. In if you could, there is a documentary, An Inconvenient Truth sequel, whereby the, previous US former Vice President Al Gore basically speaks about his experience, how he convinced basically India to become part of Paris Agreement. India basically asked that we have 75 million population still waiting for some energy transition, and we need to mine that coal in order to supply that population with energy. So Al Gore, knowingly that if had India been would be proceeding with this plan of providing the 75 million, with allowing 75 million population to burn coal for energy transition from the coal dung burning and the wood burning, it will fail the overall outcome, global outcome of Paris Agreement. So he basically took a lot of interest, and he motivated the international solar panel companies and solar energy firms to supply the solar energy instruments of high advanced generation to India on a very cheaper interest rates. And the whole financing was done by I don't know, leading financing institutions. I'm not sure, so I won't be quoting like ATB, World Bank. So you could have a for reference, you could watch An Inconvenient Truth sequel, whereby he has dedicatedly showed this struggle for 30 minutes. So in this way, there was a win-win situation for India, whereby India got the finance required for the installation of that solar panels or solar energy, and Al Gore basically got that commitment from India that they won't be burning or they won't be mining that coal, and the company, the energy, solar energy, also got the business. So this was a win-win situation for three parties. We could look forward to similar case in installing waste to energy projects or recycling projects in SAARC countries. For example, we basically import 85% of our fuel from Middle East countries. Instead of importing that fuel from those countries and consuming it on vehicle rotting, and then again, consuming it from in place of biogas and as a conventional fossil fuel burning for energy production and etc., we could import that technology, or we could have a finance available from these Middle East countries as a loan, and then we could install such technologies over here, whereby we would also not only be saving this fuel for commuting of this waste, but also we will be producing biogas and other compost, and from landfill we'll be having methane and biogas from there as well, and so that we will have this indigenous fuel available to us as well. So, and secondly, once you have installed this setup at your national level, then this is a self-sustainable project. It will be producing biogas, as Dr. Nizami rightly said. It will be pointed out that it will be converting, reducing 60% of the waste, and that waste is converted into resource. It will be a recyclable material, it will be a compost, it will be a fertilizer, it will be a biogas, everything. So you have a valuable resource, so you could sell all these resources to economy community, and you could have this project self-sustainable. Even it could repay the investment or capital cost as well in 10 to 15 years, if I'm not wrong, if Dr. Nizami may point me out. So the financial mechanism is there. We just have to have the will, and for that, I think the Indian deal with the leading solar energy firms, financed by leading world's financial groups, and I think on a very cheap interest rate. On the contrary, I might point out how Pakistan basically is importing coal for power plant, which is I won't going to be into the quality of or the advancement of those coal-fired power plants. So India made a right move for solar energy installation, and what we are doing. So we really need some will and we need some policy measure. So finance is available. And I am hopeful that the next presenter, inshallah, would be covering this topic in much more detail. So
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Naveed. You have given a very good idea. I wish we could have discussed these issues in much detail, but since the webinar is being scheduled till 1:30, and on safe side we have taken the time up till 2, but I am afraid that whether we would be closing it up by 2. So I'll request you both to stay with us for an hour, for maximum 50 minutes further, so that we can, if we find some additional time in the end, we will take all other questions. So right now I will stop these questions, although I have so many questions pending with me and so many other questions are in pipeline, but I'll beg you pardon that it's very difficult to manage the other presenter. So let's move to our last but not least, our next presenter, who is Mr. Sandeep Kumar Mohante. Mr. Sandeep Kumar Mohante is a director with PwC PricewaterhouseCoopers Energy and Utilities Group. He has over 10 years of professional experience in management consulting and has supported multiple Indian firms, global utilities, and private equity clients on financing strategy, market research, financing modeling, commercial contract review, and strategic advice on growth, market entry, and expansion. He has exposure to power and utilities, mining, urban transport, and agriculture, and has worked across India, Bhutan, Vietnam, Cambodia, Nigeria, Uganda, and South Africa. He has worked extensively supporting various funds in carving opportunity areas in SAARC region and setting up operations in respective countries. Furthermore, Sandeep has supported various entities in assessing fund requirements for acquisition and future capital investments, which includes identifying sources of funds, including debt, equity, and bridge financing. Recently, he has supported multiple private equity funds, public and private sector banks, and promoters in developing restructuring plans for resolution of stress assets in the power sector. He holds a master's degree in business management, specialization in finance and strategy. So over to you, Mr. Sandeep Kumar Mohante. I hope you have good time and you will share what come upon the expectations, what our participants are interested in. So over to you. Mr. Sandeep, can you hear me? Are you with us?
Yes, yes. Yes, Mr. Ehsan, I'm able to hear you.
Sure. So please go ahead with your, because we have we are short of time. So please be brief accordingly.
Absolutely, I'll be very, very brief. I think it was good to be a part of the previous presentation, able to hear some of the questions. Possibly, we are able to take up some of those questions during our presentation, and it helps the participants in formulating what they are doing in their geographies right now.
Yeah,
So
sure. If
we
you
just
are
open the
interested, we can make it a bit interactive. Yes, we can support you. It's up to you.
So my topic for today is financing of municipal energy conservation and energy efficiency projects. Now, while this particular presentation, we have tried to focus on a specific kind of municipal projects, but in the introduction part, I'll just quickly also touch base upon how the general municipal financing happens beyond energy conservation projects in terms of either utility or other kinds of projects that the local bodies would be intending to take up. But because of challenges in terms of getting capital mobilized, they are unable to. Now, before starting and moving on to municipal projects, there is a very clear distinction we should all appreciate in terms of when we are evaluating successful local body projects across the world, and that is that the municipal infrastructure creation happens before the businesses can move in. So you invest before and the tax revenues comes after, which means that essentially we need to find ways to mobilize capital today. The returns or the cash flows might actually start 5 years or 10 years beyond. So this is one of the reasons why the traditional forms of fundraising may not work in case of municipal utilities. Having said that, many of the developmental agencies like Asian Development Bank, World Bank, IFC, and we have been working also closely with some of them, are looking at some sort of innovative structures, instruments to actually take care of these requirements of local bodies. Now, with this introduction, I would like to start our presentation. So globally in 2017, we invested about $236 billion across the world, the local bodies, in energy efficiency projects. Now, the energy efficiency, typically, if you look at projects, could be classified into 4 categories: indoor lighting, public lighting, building retrofit, and municipal utility services. And municipal utility services is a large area which is basically managing, water, waste management, your gas distribution network, etc. Now, the chart on the right-hand side, if you see, this basically places each of these buckets of activities across a technical complexity chart. The reason to mention this is that our experience especially in the developing economies, show that the local bodies are keen to take up projects which have lower technical complexity, and hence actually the payback period is quite shorter. There could be participation in terms of consumer financing, but they find it often difficult to take up more complex technical projects, which, as we move from indoor lighting to municipal utilities, and some of which my previous presenter was talking about in terms of waste management, efficient water distribution, etc. So lower technical complexity also gives lower payback periods, easy to finance. Higher technical complexity, more impact, but difficult to mobilize capital. But having said that, there has been a lot of interest from developmental funding institutions across the world to invest in the high technical complexity projects, such as, for example, better waste management system, better water management system, compared to pure low technical complexity projects like indoor lighting. If we look at what energy efficiency projects today are all about, there are basically, and this is the chart which basically classifies the objective, the goal, the kind of models we are typically seeing, and how do we assess the feasibility of it. So goal, I think, for SAARC nations is quite simple. Our energy prices are rising. We actually end up paying one of the highest in terms of fossil fuel charges across the world. We have an increasing population, increasing consumption. Our resource requirement is high. We are actually big emitters of greenhouse gases, and we have to be conscious about climate change. Municipal energy efficiency services can help reduce our energy cost overall, improve the service of delivery. It can improve basically the quality of life of people by renovating what the existing infrastructure is, as well as, I think, the end goal is also to have to go to a stage where there's more businesses coming in on the backdrop of better and cleaner infrastructure, leading to a better revenue profile for the local body as well as for the country. In terms of energy efficiency, we have seen 2 broad types of contract. One is a turnkey project. Turnkey projects are typically taken up when municipal corporations treat an energy efficiency projects just like project of any other kind. They either invest through budgetary allocations, or they borrow from external market in form of bonds, etc. And they fund the project. There may or may not be direct recourse from that particular project. The second is which has been talked about a lot, but the success stories are actually quite I mean, there are success as well as failure stories in this model, especially in developing nations. That is the ESCO model, wherein what we are trying to do is that we are trying to fund the project or raise capital for the project based on energy savings that we are projecting. So this model has found success in South Africa quite a bit. That's actually one of the role model ESCOs that we could look at. There have been success stories earlier in Europe and Latin America as well. But in Asian countries, there has been partial success, is what I would say. In terms of, and then is the fourth block, which is about feasibility of the project, cost of capital, the cost efficiency, that's basically cost of how best we can implement the project, sensitivity assessment, and then identifying the best solution that you can have, coupled with coupled with analysis of the market. The idea is that these four building blocks forms the precursor to thinking about or implementing any of the energy efficiency project that we might have. Now, before going and talking about what are the sources of, what could be the funding mechanism for any of these projects, it's important to understand what typically the revenue and expenditure side for a municipal body would look like. In terms of revenue streams, most of them have tax revenues and non-tax revenues. Within non-tax revenues, it is primarily to do with land registration fees, vehicle usage taxes, etc., which forms a part of their revenue. The other is the tax revenue, which is about property tax, tax on animals and carriages, etc. Apart from that, most local bodies also get grants or budgetary funding from central or the state governments in our individual countries. And there could be very, very small other sources of income wherein they look to sell some of the existing municipal asset, monetize real estate, etc. On expenditure, and that's a big list, they generally incur a huge amount of administration and planning expenditure. Then there's the utility kind of expenditure, which is about distribution of utility services, be it water, waste management, in certain cases electricity as well, although in most Asian countries electricity is primarily done by a separate public utility, but across the globe in many cases the municipal local bodies also cater to that. And apart from that, the other welfare schemes in education and women, etc. So the expenditure list is huge. The sources of revenue is limited, and the biggest challenge for many of our local bodies is that the revenue streams only picks up when there is a greater urbanization and industrialization happening within city limits. And this would in turn depend on how best our infrastructure is planned in the city overall. So we are making, as I was mentioning, we are making investments earlier, and we might be reaping the benefits a little later. So that's how the model typically evolves. Now, some of the challenges that we have seen in case of energy efficiency projects, I think access to financing for a lot of local bodies, unlike in countries like US, where the biggest borrowers in the country there would be local bodies. In most of our SAARC nations, the local bodies have a very poor credit worthiness. They have in past either defaulted or delayed payments, which kind of adds to the woes. There is also a big lack of awareness in terms of how clean energy or energy efficiency projects can assist. So people, if for example, if you go to UK, the growth of their renewable energy or clean energy happened on the backdrop of a program which was started by David Cameron. It was based on a behavioral science theory called nudge economics. So in this, he had formed a nudge unit within the government, and the entire effort of the nudge unit was basically to raise awareness level of people so that they are willing to pay a little more to have a much more cleaner and more energy efficient ecosystem within the country. This was so successful under David Cameron's under his period of ruling, that it was then adopted, and a similar nudge unit was created in US as well as in Australia. So this nudge is a great way of convincing people that look, there is a benefit to the future to a planet if you pay a little more. And some of the examples I can cite even from India that we have recently been able to nudge people is, for example, we ran a campaign where people who can afford gave up their gas subsidy. Now, this was very successful when employees from all blue-collared employees were very happy to give up gas subsidy so that the subsidy amounts for the country could be reduced. So these are, awareness is a big challenge when you are looking at energy efficiency and renewable projects. And finally is the execution capacity. This again is a big concern, especially for SAARC countries, because often we find that the procurement and the execution capability of local bodies are sometimes challenged. There are long delays, which leads to cost overruns. The procurement is inefficient. The contractors are not monitored well. So execution challenges would lead to a credibility deficit among the investors. So that's again something. These are the three things that we need to be aware about any project that we pick up, especially if it is to deal with clean energy, where the cost could be incremental. If we look at now coming directly to the main topic, if we look at in terms of financial mechanism, there are three broad blocks of financing which is available. One is which is pure public funding. So pure public funding could be in form of grants, where basically the government invests with no expectation of returns. Typically, grants in theory should be given to projects which are non-viable, so which is being developed in a very, very poor, below poverty line environment where people are unable to afford, but it is important to develop. The next two are through budgetary allocation. We have actually categorized into two portions, which is general budget, and the second could be budget capture. The difference is actually very similar to just having just funding basically the repayment getting funded either through incremental revenues of the clean energy project, or it is getting funded as a part of overall municipal cooperation. So that is the only two difference between the general budget and budget capture. But essentially, it means that the government is making allocation for this project. Public-private partnership model, wherein there is an involvement of both public parties as well as private funds to fund energy efficiency project. And there are three different types that we typically see. One is energy efficient funds. So typically what would happen in this kind of structure is that there is a pooled vehicle which the government creates. These pooled vehicles, for the benefit and to attract investors, should ideally have some tax incentive structures. The repatriation of capital and profit should be tax-free, something similar to that, like trust structures we have elsewhere in the world. And the cornerstone investor in these funds is typically the government. So the first dollar that is put into the fund is put in by the government of that particular country. And the rest of the investors are then brought on to the board. So this is a kind of a pooled vehicle. The cornerstone investor is the government, and the rest people come in and invest. So this model again has been used, at least in India, we have been using it to have different state infrastructure funds. We have been using it quite successfully in some cases. The second kind of model is credit lines. So typically what happens in credit lines, and again, this is very unpopular in some cases, is that a lending institution gets a line of credit to offer to municipal bodies for energy efficiency projects. These line of credits typically could come from multilateral agencies. And there are examples again where JICA and ADB offer line of credits to commercial banks within the country to utilize that money for funding renewable and energy efficiency projects. So that's the second kind of private-public partnership in terms of funding. The third, which we believe is the future of funding, is basically guarantees. So when we have a corpus of public money, there are two ways of using it. We can either use this corpus to completely fund the project, or we could use this corpus to play an enabler in the entire ecosystem. Uh, to play an enabler means that we are able to execute a lot more with the limited capital. Now, what do I mean by this? It means that if we have, let's say, $100 of public money which is to be invested, we can use that $100 to invest in a project and set up an asset, or we can offer $10 of guarantee to different public or private investments which is happening in this sector. In turn, this guarantee helps the company raise funds at a cheaper rate, hence making it affordable for consumers. And instead of instead of putting up asset which is only $100, we are able to multiply it 10 times. So that's the enabler effect that a credit guarantee, credit guarantee fund could have on infrastructure projects. This has been very successful in the initial days of PPP, especially in Latin America. Very, very successful. And if any of us actually follow, we would see that there is a very strong correlation in terms of how infrastructure investments in Latin America took place and how it's happening right now in Asia. Finally, the last element is private lending. Now, typically, private lending will happen and is successful if the project is self-funding. Basically, if it can successfully meet the liabilities that comes from the lending. And there are various forms. It could be vendor credit, which comes in form of whoever is the OEM supplier. If it's an international company, can bring funding from its host country. It could be a leasing of an asset. There are benefits of taxation to it, or it could be simple commercial loans, which is offered by the banking sector in the country. And finally, it could be municipal bonds, where the municipal authority goes and raises these bonds on either domestic or international markets. I think in terms of energy efficiency, this municipal bonds has picked up quite a lot, especially globally. We have seen a lot of municipal corporations raising something called green bonds or sustainability bonds, and many of them actually leveraging the City of London market to do that. I think overall the market has helped to raise about $37 billion in the last 4 years in terms of green bond raise. And quite recently, actually, one of southern states of India, Kerala, raised something called a masala green bond, in which the liabilities are to be serviced in Indian rupee rather than in pounds, thereby reducing the hedging risk as well. So green bonds in international market is something that is big and should be definitely explored. Here we are talking about a few examples in all the three cases: public, private, and basically PPP kind of financing. So we have taken an example of from Turkey in terms of public funding, where a small fund was set up along with IFC. The anchor investor, again in this case, the first bit of money was put in by the government. IFC helped the government set up this fund, also put in some extra money. The aim was to basically assist some of the local bodies, the local financial institution, banks, infra funds, etc., to develop capability to look at and evaluate and fund some of the energy efficiency projects. And it has been fairly successful, if not a lot, in terms of funding energy efficiency projects across Turkey. So this is one of the example of pure public funding. The drawback in this case is that it still needs public money to be spent and a lot of public money to come in before we can start investing. So that's one, and it often can have inefficiencies as well. The second is pure private lending, and we've taken an example of US. Mostly in private lending works well with where the projects itself are very feasible. And US has done this in a massive scale. So one of the Michigan city basically had issued green energy bonds for funding their energy efficiency projects. And it has been fairly successful in terms of also Also taking it to a much micro level. So basically, the funds that were raised were also given to individual landlords to fund energy efficiency projects at a very low interest rate. And the resultant savings has also been quite stagnant. So this is a private lending which may work for certain cities in our SAARC countries, but not for all. And finally, an example of revolving energy efficiency fund, which is a PPP model. And we've again taken two cases here. I think this is the way forward if we look at for majority of the cases in the SAARC country, especially when we talk about. We have taken one for from Bulgaria and the other from India. Actually, both are quite similar. So basically here, a private and a public entity just came together, establish a fund, and they were helping to fund energy efficiency projects. The idea is that sometimes having an anchor investor or having some sort of facility extended from the public helps to instill more confidence in the private sector, and I think that plays an enabling role. So this is definitely the kind of structure that we would like to see implemented more across the SAARC countries, if I can say. So again, a slide which basically looks at different kind of financing tools that can be used for large and small municipalities. While this can be read, I think what I can very quickly take a bit of time on is to explain how some small municipalities can go ahead and implement projects, because I think the bigger ones anyways have budgetary capital as well as ability to raise funds. In many cases, what we have tried to also establish is that if the small municipal bodies could come together and pool their assets, thereby creating a much larger vehicle of clusters of assets, that often can be very attractive to go and raise a commercial lending from the market. So this cluster program was something which we were also working with government of UK about a year and a half back, wherein we were reaching out to small municipal bodies and getting clusters of assets created. And these clusters of assets we were then putting up on a platform to be introduced to larger lenders, larger green investors, where they can come and directly invest in the cluster programs. So that helps if in terms of small municipalities. The larger ones, I think, would anyways have the means and withholds to raise funds. Again, not much, I won't take much time, but this is just to show how typically energy efficiency projects across SAARC nations have been funded. I think we have, while we even in India or Pakistan, we have used some of the other techniques of some funds or credit facilities being extended. I think largely it has been through budgetary allocation from the state or from the central government across nations. The others are very small if they exist. Again, very similar, we have not availed much of the commercial mechanisms available except in India and Bangladesh, but that again went to a very small extent. Largely it has been public funding. Okay, so in terms of how do we look at, how do we fund projects, in answering that question, there are a couple of things that we can do. I think the way forward is to, of course, mobilize private funding, that is getting PPP more involved in our commercial structures wherever we are investing. We need to look at a long tenure debt financing. So, some of the major failures in India recently in the banking sector showed us that that we need to be very cautious about asset liability mismatch. We are looking to fund a project which has a life cycle of 10-20 years through borrowing of 3 or 5 years. It may create a whole lot of mess that we would not be able to get out of. The second would be and this is a major role that the government can play, is to look at de-risking the project profile. I think today, if you look at the investor class, like international pension funds, etc., they are very keen to come into more clean energy and energy efficiency projects at a very low return, in fact, but they are more concerned about the sustainability of the project They're more concerned about the country laws, which needs to be stable. They're more concerned about the predictability of cash flows. So I think so it's very important from the perspective of the governments that we need to look at de-risking the energy efficiency projects wherever we are trying to bring in PPP or private modeling, private sector or international money. The other two things which has worked is that in some of the large municipal bodies that we have, many a times what we do is that we club a single project which might have multiple components together. It might be worthwhile to actually unbundle those components. And what do I mean by that? Basically, if we look at a citywide program, the citywide program can have multiple components. One could be a more real estate linked development. The other could be pure utility based services. A third could be more of a public sort of public access or public safety kind of services. Now, out of these three, if we look at the first model, that is a direct monetization model. So any land related works could be monetized on day zero once you are done with it and you sell it off. Any of the utility services is a different kind of funding structure. It should be a long debt, long tenure debt, where it should be your tariffs should be sustainable to meet your debt commitments. The third is an element where we might need government support or budgetary support, because these are the services where essentially the public doesn't pay, but we, the municipal or the local bodies, invest in those kind of projects to fund to basically improve the quality of life of its people. So it might be useful, especially in large municipal bodies, to unbundle large projects. At the same time, it might also be useful to basically pool small finances in small projects, especially when the projects are of similar type. So, for example, if let's say 5 cities in Bangladesh are implementing a lighting project, which is of very similar nature, it may be useful to actually pool all the 5 lighting projects together and avoid it as a single large sort of project together. It helps to attract bigger and more credit-worthy international companies and funds to come in and invest. So these are, I think, the 4 implementation structures that we should be concerned about. So this is an example of how a pooled finance body might work. So basically, we have on the left-hand side, we have so on the right-hand side, we have a set of different projects which belongs to multiple local bodies. These local bodies pool their requirements together, and then in turn, when they approach the bond market or they approach a lender, international lender, they take the entire block of assets together. This often helps at least to fund some of the smaller infrastructure projects that we might have. This is an example of how to unbundle large projects. So typically, and this is especially useful wherever we have a greenfield city being developed or a major renovation works being undertaken. So as I was saying, there are 3 different types of revenue sources: infrastructure, operations, and the real estate. Operations is basically the utility part of it. And all these 3 could be unbundled because their source of revenue is different and the financing could be done separately. So we need to think of more innovative structures whenever, especially we are looking at different kinds of project funding. So key recommendations for the market. I think whatever steps we are taking, especially in clean energy efficiency space, it should be guided by a national strategy. There should be a greater awareness among people. We cannot have so for example, if we are trying to promote electric vehicles in the country, we cannot have policies which still subsidize a combustion engine vehicle. We need to make it more expensive and need to make electric vehicle cheaper. So the policies in turn should be basically in tune with the kind of projects that we are undertaking. We should look at different business models which are basically more suited to our needs. It's difficult to pick up a model from elsewhere in the developed nations and simply just fit it for our own countries. It doesn't work in many cases. We have seen the business models typically work where there is a consumer focus. So basically, If you're trying to build a business model where the entire funding is done by public funding, we have seen that in most likelihood it's not a scalable model. A scalable model is where the consumer participation is high, there is some returns and the consumer understands what he's paying for and why he's paying for. And finally, I think the idea should be on developing a more long-term market for funding these projects. Short-term markets, short-term strategies of investing in one project might help in that particular project, but it's not beneficial for the local body overall. So this is broadly, the kind of views that we had on this topic. But happy to take up any questions that you might have on this.
Dear Sandeep, thank you very much. I wish I could listen to you, keep listening to you. Thanks a lot for guidance, for guiding us on how to arrange finances for initiating energy conservation projects in municipalities of SAARC. I am sure representative from other member states will definitely learn from your rich knowledge and international experience on such financing models. So I look forward for questions. There are some written questions, but yet I again offer the opportunity to Mr. Masood Manzai, if they can have their questions live. Otherwise, I can also share their questions. I believe all the our lead panelist group is present with us, and they can go with their questions. So please, over to you, Mr. Masood.
Thanks, Mr. Marwat. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we are clearly here.
Yeah, most of our question was answered by the spectacle presentators, and we don't have any other questions. We will written our question and send to you by email, and we hope that we can give our reply and learn something more. Thank you. We have not any specific questions.
Yeah. Thank you, Masood. Thank you, Masood Manzai. I once again welcome you all. Since I have two of your questions, which I'm also interested to put to our elite panelists, if any of them might have answer or have information regarding. You asked that is there any waste to energy project implemented under the public-private partnership model in the SAARC region? If yes, how much is the tariff rate for the project? So may I ask if anyone have this information, if we have any such project installed in our region? Maybe Mr. Sandeep or somebody can answer.
I can talk about India. So in India, there are a lot of. I think the first successful one which was implemented in the state of Delhi, where a private company with the name of Jindal Shaw had set up 10-12 megawatt of asset. The next was developed in Bangalore, which had been partially successful. And then another company called A2Z, which was primarily into citywide waste management services, had set up 4 projects altogether. And finally, right now we have another group which has set up, which has actually acquired projects for around 14 assets in India, but he has successfully constructed 3. Now, from an Indian perspective, let me just convert it into dollar terms so it's easier for everyone to understand. The energy efficiency, the waste to energy projects in India have been quite expensive. It is in the range of 9 to 10 cents to achieve viability. The way that I think I was also listening to a previous presenter and some of the questions there, definitely the kind of waste that we are getting is a big concern in terms of taking some of the developed technologies and implementing it. One of the stories I can share is of a company where they saw a very fine working technology in Singapore, brought it to India, implemented in 4 places, but they were not even able to keep up generation for 10% of the number of days that they in a year. So the company actually went ahead and ended up making huge losses in the company. They tried to change people's behavior by giving 2 different kind of dustbins. Segregation happens at source, but none of it helped. In another case, we have seen where a European company was implementing a waste management system here. They tested, their level best to basically bring up the performance levels to 75-80% of utilization. They were unable to do so after 1 year, and it's a very, very big reputed company. At the end of the 1 year, they simply said that we cannot do it. They forgo their 10% of final payments and they left. So I think it's a very crucial thing that in terms of, I think the tariffs are high, yes, but I believe that the technology risks are very, very high in waste to energy systems. We need something which is very localized for our own ambient environment to be implemented successfully. Because I've really not seen a real successful story in this, especially in India at least. Does this answer the question?
Hello.
Yeah, yes, Sandeep. Yes, Sandeep.
Hello.
It's very.
Yeah.
Yeah, please, Mr. Naveed.
May I add something? Yeah, Mr. S.
Sure. But be brief.
I'll be because we are running out of time, so I'll briefly be pointing out to 3 to 4 projects, and the participants, the respected participants, may visit their websites. The first one is Lahore Compost. It's a private entity, Lahore Compost.
So
It
you are
is
talking
basically
about
converting
Pakistan.
waste.
Okay.
Pakistan's
Yes.
and more specifically about Punjab province. So it's a Lahore Compost. It's converting the waste into compost, and it's a private entity. The second one could be RTF plant, refuse dry fill plant, and it is basically a very leading cement manufacturer, cement producers, DG Cement. So it is basically public-private partnership that DG Cement is financing for the project, and LWMC Lahore Waste Management Company is facilitating the operation of collection of the waste. So refuse dry fuel project is quite running. The third one could be Waste Busters. All these three could be looked into detail by visiting their website. So third one could be Waste Busters. So Waste Busters, and in these Waste Busters, the participants, respected participants, could have the answer to their earlier question that was pointed out to Dr. Nazami, that what do we can do with the poor segregation. So Waste Busters is and this refuse dry fill facility, RDF facility, is also basically, so they have this mechanical segregation in place whereby mixed waste is segregated into different categories, and then under one roof it is converted into it is converted into compost at a land and nearby, and then it was converted into pellets, and then it is burned in the form of RDF at one place, and sent to recyclable firms for the recycling. So Waste Busters, Lahore Compost, and RDF plant of DG Cement. So these three are quite the answers of public, private, or even private entities which are working in this domain. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your addition. I hope our Ghani friends, delegates would have a lot of knowledge and they can go to check these websites either in India and Pakistan. So before going to another question, I quickly want to thank Mr. Muhammad Ali Bakir. I believe he's with us, and I thank all his team and his delegates and the officials from Government of Bangladesh. So I quickly offer him, if he has any specific question or anything he want to say, then we will go move to another questions in our list. Yes, Bakir.
Good arrangement বলো আমারটা একটু tell me good arrangement সবকিছু মিলে
Muhammad Ali Bakir, can you hear us?
the arrangement is along with
Hello.
team.
Well, we'll move to our next question. It's basically SAARC specific question, and again, it's from Mr. Masood Manzai. They are interested to know that whether there is any financial mechanism with SAARC to finance waste to energy projects, and how could SAARC assist our member states in this regard. So I'll request our Honorable Deputy Director, SAARC Energy Center, Dr. Shoaib Ahmed, to answer this question. Sir.
Hello, Masood. Good afternoon. It's Dr. Shoaib here. I suppose I'm audible to you. Am I audible to everybody, Masood?
Yes, sir, they can hear you
All
because
right, okay.
you are on screen.
Well, Masood, yes, definitely there is a SAARC development fund. That's an institute created by all the 8 member countries. It has a working capital to the tune of few hundred million US dollars. They have their lending window for which is called for infrastructure and energy projects. I think under that window you can apply for a loan from the SAARC Development Fund, and that can be used in different projects. These projects for sure include waste to energy projects. They have further details on their website. They have their contact numbers as well. They have, of course, like any other institute, some limitations that they won't be, they will be giving a portion of the total amount. They need some equity coming from the project developer or the government as well. So that's the information I have. But just try their website. If you have any problems, we are available at SAARC Energy Center to help you out, to get you connected to the SAARC Development Fund. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you
Could
so
you
much,
repeat
Dr.
the fund name?
Sorry?
Could you please, can you repeat the name of that fund and where we should find for that?
Yeah, it's SAARC Development Fund. It's basically based in Bhutan. You can easily search for their website. Mr. Motiwala is their Director General, and it's in Bhutan. You can simply search for SAARC Development Fund. We simply call it SDF.
Okay, thank you so much.
Welcome, welcome. So we move to our next question. It's basically for Mr. Naveed Anwar. This is from Miss Mariam Salim from Pakistan. She want to know that how can we relate the economy of a city with its waste management? If a city has open dump sites, how it will contribute to the effect and affect the city's economy?
Thank you, dear Mr. Hassan. Thank you, Ms. Mariam Salim, for the interest in the economic aspect of municipal waste management of a city. So I'll be brief because there are many facets, it's a multifaceted aspects. There are many aspects to this thing, but most of the aspects have already been explained. Like if you are if you are having an open dump sites, firstly, if you are not having a proper efficient municipal waste management system, and you are not basically efficiently are dealing municipal waste six functional element, that is from generation to disposal, so you will be spending a lot of in the economy on managing your waste. And secondly, your vehicles are commuting, your vehicles are and there is a labor cost to this waste management, and there is a, if you are managing this waste, and then if you are dumping it into a dump site, so that dump site basically there is a static pollution to that, and that will damage the and that will reduce the economic cost of that land, and the adjacent facilities as well. And secondly, then there would be some other issues with this dump site. There would be, and you could have this water pollution as well, and you don't know what is the water table of that city. Chances are that if it is an upstream, or if it is if you are dumping your waste and upstream, so chances are it could pollute your water table as well. And this is, and then you are dumping your waste without any mechanical or without any technological advanced methodology, so you will be spending a lot of economy. On the contrary, and you are dumping into open disposal, so there will be air pollution, there will be noise, solid waste, land pollution, and there would be number of diseases would be there. And in order to get for those diseases, you will have to spend, the government will have to spend, or city administration have to spend a lot of budget on the health expenditure as well, on the hospitals. And if you are managing your waste properly, so a lot of diseases which are driven through mismanagement waste would be tackled without incurring this expense as well. And secondly, it's a waste is a resource, and if you are not managing this waste properly, you are missing a lot of economic opportunities as well that you could cap. If you could manage this waste properly, you could convert this waste into resource like I talked about earlier in case of biogas production. I also am working currently on a project that is basically calculating the potential of converting this waste into biogas, and how this conversion of biogas or refuse rifle will increase the employment opportunity. How this biogas, for example, our waste, a thousand, 1 ton waste would produce, for example, roughly 100 kg of biogas. So this 100 kg of biogas, if we were to buy this biogas from it, or mostly it is imported, if we were to buy this biogas or fuel, or mostly it's imported, so it would cost the city administration roughly 150 per kg, and it will result in the cash outflow from the city's economy to some other city or to some other country. So, but now we are producing biogas from that waste. So we are not only basically minimizing the waste management costs, but we also are producing revenue from that biogas. So we are also saving cost incurred on the import or the purchase of biogas or the fuel. And same goes for fertilizers. If a city is producing biogas and or the compost, and that is a fertilizer as well, so city could sell that fertilizers to its own agriculture areas or the adjacent agriculture areas. So city could actually earn some revenue from that compost as well. So same goes for recycling materials, and a lot of other list is there. So if we could manage a waste properly, city could generate revenue from that. But if we are not managing waste properly, city would have to spend a lot of direct costs on due to mismanagement of waste, and a lot of indirect costs are as also there that city would have to spend. So I hope I have briefly shared my views.
Yeah. Thank you
With
very
some
much.
more
Thank you.
specific, yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Naveed, for your time all over the webinar, and same with I'm thankful to Mr. Sandeep Kumar for his patience before his presentation. We got a bit late from the scheduled time, and I'm also thankful to Mr. Dr. Nizami, who all the way from Saudi Arabia joined us and to give us his time and his expertise and his knowledge. So I believe we will move towards
Thank you.
conclusion. So yeah, thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. So let's move towards our conclusion and closing of the webinar. So, ladies and gentlemen, after listening to the experts, it can be easily assessed that this is such a vast topic and holds a huge potential. At this point of time, what I can conclude is that there is a huge multifaceted potential for energy saving in municipalities, whether it's day-to-day operation, municipal operations such as solid waste collection, or the consumption by or for the community such as street lighting or household consumptions directly. As we discussed and identified that how just by intelligently managing vehicle routing for collection of municipal solid waste, we can save a huge chunk of energy. Indirectly, we can say the fuel we consumed in our vehicles. Another area is the global problem of handling solid waste, where we can convert the problem into opportunity by converting our waste into the useful energy and thus reducing a major part of the waste produced. Similarly, collection of methane biogas from organic part of solid waste through sanitary landfill could be another option, and so on and so forth. The most important part that has the major role in initiating and implementing of all such intervention is financing of investment oriented projects such as lighting intervention, variable speed drives, motors for water system, or improved insulation and heat recovery, etc., is always a major issue, particularly in developing world. In the end, I would suggest few standard measures of a municipality intend to bring in the culture of energy conservation and to have some concrete result oriented actions. You will have to develop a municipal energy conservation strategy that outlines where and how key energy saving areas will be achieved in different sectors of the economy. The strategy should also highlight how, when, and by whom these targets could be achieved. Once the strategy is in place, an internal coordinating energy committee should be established to track the implementation of the strategy. With this, I may like to conclude our webinar. Once again, I thank you all and everyone for attending today's webinar. We had listened to some excellent presentation delivered by our distinguished presenters from member states and other regions around the globe. All the presentations will be available on SAARC Energy Center website very shortly. We would love to hear from you any suggestion and comments for further improvements and any suggested topics of your interest on which you want us to arrange future webinars. We would glad to do that. With this, me signing out. Thank you again for joining us today and looking forward to see you next time. Bye bye.